You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowing like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look up better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 21st part of What If Deku and Hero Academia Joins Power Rangers. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of GokuMuto on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Whoa! This is crazy! Setsuna gasped, as they tried to keep their balance from the insane wind pressure. Where did all this insane amount of wind come from? She asked while shielding her face from wind and rain. I believe that will answer your question. Tokoyami said, pointing in the distance, as the other students looked to see a gigantic tornado in the middle of the downpour zone, which was the shores of the sudden change in weather. A tornado? I don't remember seeing that thing when we got dropped here. Sen exclaimed in surprise. Whatever that is, it isn't a random occurrence of this zone, this was deliberately caused. Kurwaro realized that it was the work of a villain while keeping a strong grip on his classmates' arms. So you're saying it's a villain that causing this crazy weather change? Sen said while holding on tightly to his classroom hand to prevent being blown away. It gotta be. But where the hell are they? Setsuna said as she was unable to find the villain who was responsible for this. Don't know, but finding them going to be a real challenge with this insane weather, Kurwaro stated while gritting his teeth in frustration. The tornadoes appear to make locating the villains difficult for them, as the UA students were busy trying to not be blown away by the wind current. Hey, Tokoyami. Doesn't all of this seem familiar to you by any chance? Dark Shadow asked his partner, as he felt like he'd seen this sudden tornado appear before. You're right, it does, Tokoyami said as he picked on what his quirk was saying before pulling out his Dino Charge Morpher. And if our hunch is right about this, then I know where the one responsible for this is hiding. He said with the others hearing the Ranger's comment. You know where the criminal is hiding? Setsuna asked the boy. Yes, and I know how to smoke him, Tokoyami said before looking back at the girl. But I need both of my hands in order to draw him out, so sorry in advance for what I'm about to do next, Setsuna. He said, confusing the girl before looking at the others behind them. Someone catch her. He instructed the other. Wait, what? Setsuna screams out before Tokoyami lets go of her hand, flying backward. As Setsuna flew back from the strong wind current and passed by the others, Setsuna felt a hand gripping her arm and pulled the girl back down to the ground, then looked to see it was Koda, the one who saved her. Oh my god. Thanks for saving Koda. Setsuna said to the quiet boy, as Koda gave a shy smile back to the girl. When his hands were free, Tokoyami pulled out his Dino Saber before combining it together with his Dino Charge Morpher to form the Dino Blade Blaster, then extended out the blade on the front of his blaster to Dino Blade Blaster Power Blade mode that improved accuracy on the weapon for long-range shots. Tokoyami. You're the only one who can stop this guy. So hit him hard. Dark Shadow encouraged his partner while still holding the light pole to keep the raven-haired boy in place. Got it, Tokoyami said as he loaded up his Dino Blade Blaster Power Blade and aimed it straight at the tornado. The Ranger charged up the weapon and focused his aim at the center of the tornado, as the boy couldn't afford to miss this shot. The others were counting on him, and Tokoyami refused to let them down. After what felt like forever, Tokoyami pulled the trigger on the blaster with a black laser blast fires out of weapon, and the other students watched as the blast hit the tornado dead on while hitting the weak spot in the tornado, which resulted in a big explosion and making it vanish that causes the weather in the zone returns back to normal, as they all heard something suddenly letting out scream. Something roared out in pain, as they came flying down and crashing on the ground a few feet away from the students. The creature is a black tornado-themed horned bat demon. His name is the Whirlin, a demon. I knew it. Tokoyami calmly said, while lowering his blaster and returning dark shadow back in his body. The one responsible for this in unnatural weather was the wind demon, Whirlin. He stated as he watched Whirlin laying on the floor, groaning in pain and body smoking from the damage he'd taken while the hero course students ran up to him. Dude, that was awesome. You got him. Sen said congratulating him, with Kota nodding in agreement. Nice job, hot shot. Setsuna joked as she nudged into the ranger's shoulder. Not bad, my fellow creature of the night, Kurwaro said with a nod and smile. Now I'm starting to see why Chase and others like to call him that. It actually feels pretty good. Tokoyami thought with a chuckle before his and his classmates' attention was drawn back to the demon, who was starting to stand back up. I appreciate the compliments, but I'm afraid that this isn't over for us just yet. He reminded everyone about the danger they were still in, as the group took up their guards in front of the creature. You wretched brats. That stung. Whirlin exclaimed in anger while glaring down at the students. But don't think it will be enough to stop me from destroying you all. Especially you, Power Ranger. He bellowed while growling in frustration. Save your breath, cursed demon. Tokoyami advised, pointing at him and then at himself. My companies and I will stop you, and save the rest of our classmates. That's a promise, Whirlin. He stated as the other agreed with him. So it's companies that you want, is it? Whirlin inquired with an evil grin. Well, meet some of mine. He declared before summoning a bunch of Ranger foot soldiers in front of him, who looked at the hero course student menacingly. Kota looked utterly terrified while looking out low screaming at the killer monsters in front of them. CRP, he can summon those things too. Sen exclaimed while taking a step back in worry. He's got a lot of friends, Setsuna noted with concern about all the monstrous enemies they would have to face. But we've got each other and that's good enough. Kurwaro countered-argued. Our friend is correct. Don't lose heart just because they have a numbers advantage. Tokoyami said with a serious expression and taking a fighting stance. As long as we stick together, there are no obstacles we can overcome as a team. He said as his speech seemed to have encouraged the other students to stay strong. Ah, how touching. It almost makes me want to puke. Whirlin mocked the group of teens before raising a hand forward at them. Go, destroy them. He commanded with the grunts raising their weapons and then charging at the students. But before the UA students could react to the threat, Tokoyami acted first to prevent the Ranger villains from getting closer to his friends. Go, Dark Shadow. Tokoyami commanded as his sentient quirk shot out of the front of his body like a bullet and towards the enemy while looking pretty pissed as the darkness in this place is making Dark Shadow far more unruly than usual. Get away from our classmates. The titanic beast roared out his rage, while starting pounding the approaching Ranger grunts and swiped a massive arm through the crowd of monsters, sending them spinning into the air like they were mere ragdolls. Dark Shadow was starting to rampage like a mindless beast, more and more becoming even more violent while laying waste to the enemy forces and the area in a matter of seconds, as he got bigger and bigger from the darkness in the zone. What is this? Whirlin shouted in both shock and anger to see a giant bird wiping out his forces with ease. All of you, head back to the entrance while I keep these fiends at bay. Tokoyami said while sounding a little strangled as he struggled to get his quirk under control. What? Setsuna yelled as she and the others were shocked by the Ranger's suggestion. We're not going to leave you here to fight those things. I'll be fine, just trust me. Also, it's for the best that none of you should be unaware near me right now. Tokoyami stated while sweating as he tried to keep Dark Shadow corralled. After a few seconds of looking at the situation they were in, the US students came to a difficult decision. Okay, we'll go, but just don't you dare die on us, man, Sen told to him. Yeah, we're all going to make it out of this place together. So you better come back to us in one piece. Setsuna said with a serious tone. As another fellow being that sticks to the shadow, I respect your decision and wish you the best of luck, Kurwaro said, believing in the ranger's strength. Please be careful, Koda whispered out loud enough to the ranger. Of course. I have no intention of dying here and leaving you all behind. Tokoyami said with a small smile for his classmates' concern before Dark Shadow let out another bloody roar and sent more enemies flying in the air with his control over his quirk slipping. Now please leave this place before I lose control of him completely. He told them in a pleading tone. Upon hearing their classmates' words, the 4 other students immediately booked it to the front entrance while Tokoyami stayed behind to face the villains alone, as Whirlin noticed the other students fleeing the area before taking action against them. Oh no, you don't. Whirlin yelled out as he then shot several fireballs from his mouth directly at the fleeing students. Tokoyami noticed what the demon was doing and immediately took action by using every bit of control he still had left on Dark Shadow, then guided the large shadow bird in front of the other's path with the fireballs hitting his quirk instead, using Dark Shadow's own body to shield the students from the demon's attack. Too bright. Dark Shadow screamed out as the light of the flames weakened him greatly and made the sentient quirk shrink in size. Tokoyami used this opportunity to return his quirk back inside of him now that he had more control of Dark Shadow again before taking out a heavy breath and breathing at how close he was to losing control of himself due to his own power. Are you all ready now, Dark Shadow? Tokoyami mentally asked his question. Yeah, I'm good. Sorry about almost losing himself like that again. Dark Shadow replied back, feeling a bit shameful. The ranger then looked back to see that the others were out of sight with no one pursuing them, and this made him sigh in relief to know that they made it out in one piece. Good, they made out, Tokoyami said with a tiny grin before an angry growl brought his attention back to the Whirlin. Now just one more problem to take care of before regrouping with the others. He stated as Dark Shadow Rampage managed to eliminate the other foot soldiers in the area, just leave the 2 of them alone. You may not be part of the ranger team that defeated me years ago, but I'll still take great pleasure in killing you all the same. Whirlin said to the Hero Force Ranger with an evil laugh. And just like the Lightspeed Ranger, I'll be sure to destroy you for good this time and send you back to the deepest part of hell where you belong. Tokoyami declared back with a fearsome glare, as he separated his Dino Blade Blaster to use his Dino Charge Morpher to fight the demon. Big words, Ranger, but enough talk. Let's fight. Whirlin replied and charged towards Tokoyami. In guard. Tokoyami shouted out while rushing at Whirlin and firing his blaster at him. Whirlin conjured up several small tornadoes and sent them at Tokoyami, which the ranger quickly shot at to dispel them and make a path for him to the wind demon while avoiding the one he blasted down as the tornadoes triggering multiple explosions upon everything they were making contact and causing tons of around the surrounding area. Central Plaza, afternoon. Back at the Center Plaza, Eraserhead and Vlad were still fighting the ranger foot soldiers as best since their opponents were not human, while Sila and Scorpina still fighting each other looking evenly matched at the moment. Meanwhile, Tomura was watching from the distance with Nomo right next to him. Sila was pushed back by another one of her opponent's attacks and stopped in place by the skin of her heels because using her macro curse to launch a hailstorm of objects towards Scorpina, as Sila ordered some rocks and trees in a nearby forest to attack Scorpina. A huge number of boulders and trees flew towards Scorpina with her using her sword to cut through them like butter, before firing a red energy stream from her hands at the fly projectiles that caused large explosions, which disintegrated boulders and trees in an instant. But the demon didn't stop there as Sila knew that this was too weak to kill her and just kept sending everything around her at the monster. This is starting to get real annoying. Scorpina hissed out loud as she had enough of this before jumping out of the way of a boulder crushing and then charging up her crescent fin blade with blue energy. Boomerang. She declared while throwing her fin blade like a boomerang. Her weapon flew in the air at high speed and slashed right through the flying projectiles with ease while heading straight for Sila. she jumped to the side and nearly prevented the weapon from hitting her. But before she knew it, Scorpina caught the fin blade that returned to her and rushed at the Aetherius for another attack. "You've sealed your fate the moment you aligned with those pathetic rangers," Scorpina stated while swinging her weapon at the demon, but Sila dodged each one for her strikes before kicking at Scorpina, who blocked the kick with her blade. "As punishment, I will give you a slow death," he said before pushing away the Aetherius and raising her free hand to fire more red energy streams at the demon. Sila quickly formed another wall of books to block the attack, and she felt the heat from the concussive explosion of scathing flames emerging from burning books. Sila leaped back while shielding her face from the shockwave that was generated from the explosion, before landing on the floor and staring at Scorpina calmly, but on the inside, anger overwhelmed her. "No, you sealed your own fate by coming here and attacking my MSTR and his friends," Sila replied coldly in a combat stance. "They're not the type of humans that will be taken out so easily by a couple of delisted criminals and monsters. Admit it, Scorpina. You came unprepared." "Unprepared? To kill rangers?" "I think not, little Aetherius," Scorpina said with a creepy laugh and lunged at the Aetherius, with Sila doing the same in return. Then on the other side of the plaza, Aizawa and Vlad King had taken down some of the ranger grunts with little difficulty, as they were still holding out and help arrived. The two pros stood back to back as the mixture of creatures surrounded them. "Don't hold back on these guys, Vlad," Aizawa said, adjusting his scarf to fight as he prepared to make the first move. "These things are not human." He had seen the creatures before when he and the other teachers saw the Ranger history video. He couldn't remember their names but knew that they would have to go all out. "You don't need to tell me twice, Eraser," Vlad King said, pulling his fist back while making a blooded weapon. "I already know just how outclassed we are against Ranger villains." The creatures around them rushed towards them. Aizawa went on the offensive, delivering a kick to one of the Cyclobots, and then used his scarf to pull a henchman with a blade towards him before tossing it into a Tenga warrior. Vlad King pummeled a Quantran to the floor before morphing his blooded weapon into a shield to block an assault from both a Putty and Vivix, as he then knocked them away. "I never thought we'd be fighting the enemies of the Power Rangers," Aizawa said as he took down a Cyclobot before leaping at the next grunt. "Less talking, more fighting," Vlad King chimed in as he took out a grinder and battling by slamming their heads together. On the sideline, Tomura was still enjoying the show to see these heroes fight for their lives against the Ranger grunts, as he and Nomo had not moved the entire time while waiting for All Might to show up. "This is getting good. Those pro heroes are actually struggling against those low-level guys, but I have a feeling they might need a little push to kill those NPCs," Tomura said as he came up with a plan and began moving towards Eraserhead to kill me himself. "I hope backup comes soon, cause we can't do this forever," Aizawa thought as he felt himself getting tired before jumping over a battling for a drop kick. "Eraser, behind you," Vlad King cried out to warn his colleague when he saw something horrifying moving towards the man. Aizawa quickly turned, but it was already too late, as Tomura appeared in front of the hero with astonishing speed and hand outstretched towards Aizawa's head. Aizawa couldn't react or activate his quirk in time, only able to feel an immense amount of dread when he realized his death was approaching. "Game over, hero," Tomura gleefully said with a twisted smile, as a hand reaches out to kill the hero with his quirk. SHT. Aizawa mentality cursed as the decay villain's hand was inches away from touching the hero's face. "Stay the hell away from my teacher," a new voice shouted out before a blur appeared next to the two men in a split second, with a low kick to the villain's knee, that stunned Tomura and stopped his hand from reaching Aizawa's face. But what surprised the two men was that the person responsible for this was one of Ren's clones, who looked at the villain with an angry glare for trying to kill his homeroom teacher. Amamiya. Aizawa thought in shock at how his student just saved his life. Tomura gritted his teeth from the pain and looked at the ranger with a murderous gaze. "You, little shug." But before Tomura could reply, the clone stroked him hard with a devastating blow in the stomach as the villain felt a strong impact, then Tomura flew back into Nomo's arms before coughing up blood as a response, shocked at how hard he hit by the boy. "That's what you get, Mr. Bad Touch," Ren's clone said with a smirk before noticing the other grunts around them and decided to clear them out. "Time for little magic." He then spins himself around while using his magic to transform his entire body into a huge pink tornado that circled around the plaza like a raging typhoon. The winds were powerful enough to lift all the ranger grunts off their feet, tumbling as they were hurled around and tossed away like ragdolls. Nomo was strong enough to withstand the wind and hold on to Tomura, while Sila and Scorpina soon stopped their battle when they felt a strong gust of wind and saw what was happening, and both Vlad King and Aizawa were not affected by this thanks to Ren only aiming for the villains. This power belonged to Viduraka, the pink mystic ranger. She has the power to use wind magic. Once they were taken care of, Ren's clone then stopped spinning and returned to normal, stumbling a little as she landed on her feet. Now that was a breeze, Ren's clone quipped to himself. "I am giving that boy a pass on homework for the month," Aizawa said looking at the hurt look on Tomura's face while Nomo lay him on the ground. "Not if I do it first," Vlad King said keeping an eye on the Nomo. "Nice work, Amamiya," he shouted to the boy. "The leader of the Hero Force Rangers," Scorpina said with a hateful glare as she recognized who he was. "I thought that Kurogiri dealt with those ranger pests." Sila looked pretty joyful to see that her MSTR was in one piece before noticing that Scorpina was also distracted by this and took advantage of this, then delivered a nasty roundhouse kick to Scorpina's stomach, catching the armored woman off guard. "Garg!" Scorpina gasped out loud while feeling a massive pain in her stomach, as the evil woman's eyes nearly popped out of her skull and air left her lungs as the etherious pile drove another leg impacted on her face before being sent hurling far away in the ground. Then Sila used her macro curse to lift a number of large rocks and trees above Scorpina before slamming them on top of the ranger villain and making her scream in pain again while burying Scorpina underneath the objects. "MSTR!" Sila shouted before quickly running towards Ren. "Sila," Ren's clone said while turning to the demon woman in front of him. "It's good to that you're okay." "You as well, MSTR, Sila said with a smile. "Problem child," Aizawa angrily stated while getting their attention on him and Vlad King approaching them. "Status report. What happened at the entrance?" he said, wasting no time asking questions. "For one, I'm not even the real Ren. I'm just a clone he made from the SPD Yellow Ranger's powers." The clone said first to let them know he wasn't the real Ren before continuing his report. "As for what happened back at the entrance, we were stopped by that warp villain Kurogiri and he used his power to separate the class around the factory. They're probably fighting these villains and monsters since the group the real Ren was with got attacked by them," he said, making the two pros look worried. "That does not sound good," Vlad King said, frowning with a grim tone. "I wouldn't worry too much about that since the villains that they're fighting are just a bunch of delisted villains," the clone said with confidence as the main villains leading this attack chose quantity over quality when they required these thugs. Also, if the other rangers are with them, they can easily take care of any foot soldiers without problem. "Okay, but why are you here then?" Aizawa asked the clone why he was there. "Ren sent me here to help you three. He came up with a plan to fight back against these villains, which is why we need to hold out until the others are assembled for our counterstrike. And also hands up by the way," Ren's clone said while pointing a finger in the air. "What?" the two pro heroes said before they were interrupted as two ball of light stopped in front of them. "What in the? What's going on?" Vlad King asked while looking at the red ball of light in front of him. "Amamiya, what is this?" Aizawa asked while gazing at the black ball of light next to him, as he felt it calling out to him. "Quickly you both, grab them before the enemy recovers," Ren's clone told them with an urgent tone, as he noticed that Scorpina and Tomura were starting to get back up. Both Aizawa and Vlad King looked at their students' clones in confusion before looking at their respective ball of light and reaching out their hands to grab them. Then both of the pro-heroes' minds were filled with the memories of the previous rangers who wielded these morphers, as new powers were flowing through them. Once the bonding process was done, the light died down to reveal the morphers they were holding. In Aizawa's hand was the Brachio morpher and in Vlad King's hand were the Zeonizers. "Aren't those?" Sila said, looking at the familiar devices. "Hey, these are," Vlad King said, gasping at his new power. "Morphers." Aizawa finished while looking at the device with great interest before looking back at the clone. "But why? You two were deemed worthy by the MSTR morpher when you two didn't hesitate to face into horde of villains to protect us." Ren's clone explained before smiling. "So from here on out, you two are officially Power Rangers." The two teachers were stunned by the boy's words, but before they could say something back, their attentions were brought back to a very angry yell. "You!" Growling. Tomura shouted while growling as he scratched his neck in anger. "Who are you? No student can be this strong. Are you a DLC character?" He glared at Ren, his hatred intense. "A DLC character? We'll see about that." Ren's clone thought while looking at the man with an unamused expression and took a few steps forward. "No, I'm the main player of this screwed-up game of yours, player 2. You." Tomura growled even more than before, stopping clawing his neck. "I'll show you who's player 1. If I can't kill that damned symbol of peace, I'll just have to settle for you, brat. Nomo, kill that punk kid." He ordered the beak monster. A choked gurgle echoed across the plaza, as the hulking black creature over towards the clone in the blink of an eye, that was too fast for the untrained eye to see, but Ren's clone was able to see Nomo clearly thanks to his heightened senses. Everything around the boy moved slowly with him seeing Nomo almost getting closer with its right fist raised to strike the clone, as the clone knew he couldn't avoid the attack or risk the three behind him taking the hit instead. In response to the approaching threat, Ren's clone used his super speed to bring up his right hand and made a circular motion to manifest a blue shield projection to stop Nomo's punch from reaching him, as the clash created a massive shock and gust of wind that could be felt throughout the whole plaza, with the two were stuck in a stalemate. "What?" Tomura yelled in disbelief. Whatever he had expected to happen, it was not a kid blocking one of Nomo's punches. "Nomo, it's just one schoolboy, you were designed to beat the number 1 hero." The clone of the ranger was gritting his teeth from being sent flying away while using all of his strength, holding his ground against this beast's strength that rivals All Might's power. "Do it now!" Ren's clone shouted to his allies behind him, and each one of them swung into action to help him and jumped over him to strike Nomo. With Sila, Aizawa, and Vlad King hitting the Nomo hard enough, they created a powerful shockwave and launched the black massive monster soaring farther away from them by the sheer strength of their combined blow. This unbelievable power! Vlad King thought as he noticed his attacks were much more stronger than normal. "I was never able to hit this hard before until now." Aizawa thought in slight surprise before he and Vlad glanced at their morphers. "Is it because of this?" They both thought in curiosity. Once the monster landed on the ground, Ren's clone placed his hands together and started making hand signs before placing his right palm on the ground, as the boy used his earth manipulation ninjutsu to make the floor underneath Nomo open up and have the beast fall in the hole before closing it up to trap the creature. "Nomu!" Tomura screamed in shock to see his secret weapon taken care of so easily before turning his head at the 4 NPCs and giving them an angry glare. "Cheaters! Cheaters! You can't do that! You can't just interfere like that! Cheaters! Cheaters!" He yelled and screamed in anger. "Oh, great! Now he's throwing a tantrum," Ren's clone stated with a deadpan tone, as he was finding it hard to believe this guy was the leader of these villains. Sila covered her mouth to stop her snort, at the pathetic sight of the man-child, while Aizawa and Vlad King looked at the man with glares. They didn't want to drop their guard, but it was hard to keep up with the mood swings of the villain. One moment he would be calm and collected, then he wants to tear down everything in his path instead of savoring destruction. You all have the nerve to get in my way. And the trouble I had to bring everyone just to kill him, yet you took them out. It's not fair. Not fair. Tomura complained before pointing to Ren's clone. Especially you. Are you still alive after taking a punch from Nomo? You must be using a cheat code. Cheater. There's no way you're just an overpriced DLC or an NPC, but a secret boss. Cheat code. Secret boss. Why is this man talking in gaming terms? The clone thought as he didn't understand why this guy was thinking like this was some kind of video game. He just then decided to ignore what Tomura was saying and focused on the main problem and fact him first. Enough. Aizawa said, having enough of this man's nonsense, while tightening his grip on his capture scarf. Surrender now and you may get some leniency as long as our students are unharmed. Vlad King had moved over to stand shoulder to shoulder with his fellow teacher. Your pathetic thugs and monsters won't be able to take out our students. Just surrender before this gets any further out of hand. He wanted to put an end to this and check on his students. He knew they were skilled, but this would be their first interaction with real villains. He would be lying to himself if he would say he was not concerned for their safety. Surround. I am not giving up to either of you worthless NPCs and the secret boss over there, Tomura said, scratching the side of his neck in irritation. I am after All Might. The symbol of peace. If I need to kill a bunch of worthless trash to make him spawn here, so be it. Since you're the leader of these villains, I take it that you Tomura Shigaraki then? Ren's clone said with glaring eyes at the Hands villain. Which means you're the ones responsible for breaking into our school last week. He yelled at the man, making him stop his rant and focus on the quirkless boy. That's right. It's impressive, isn't it? Tomura said with a mischievous grin on his face as he slightly chuckled. I set up this little raiding event to kill the final boss of this game. But it seems that our party will have to first kill some of you brats in order to get All Might's attention. He said to Ren. Hearing this only made the clone clutch his fist in rage while the others looked equally upset as if this DMN villain was treating this whole situation and their lives like it was some kind of a sick game. Killing All Might? All you and your little league of flunkies are doing is ganging up on a bunch of high schoolers. It's not impressive. It's pathetic. Ren's clone snapped, before pointing at Hand villain. You're nothing but a coward. Hearing that made Tomura stop smirking, as he was now glaring at the boy. Agreed. Your tactics and planning are that of a child with no leadership skills, you foolish human. Sila stated with a glare in a mocking tone. We'll say you too. Only a truly insane person would target children. Vlad King said with his BLD boiling in rage. One way or another, you and everyone else involved in this attack are only going place in HNDCFFS or have broken bones by the end of this SHT show. So pick your poison, villain. Aizawa said with threatening eyes. Tomura frowned angrily as he began to shake in pure rage. You're dead. NOMU. Quiet being lazy and get your butt back in the fight. At the yell the ground started to shake and crack, then exploded, before Nomo came out of the hole and returned to his MSTR's side. So that's the Nomo creature, that villain we integrated earlier. Ren's clone thought as that thing was on a completely different level than anything he fought today. Stay on your toes guys, that Nomo monster has multiple quirks. He told them. How do you know that? Vlad King asked the clone. We defeated a bunch of villains that ambushed us and integrated them about how they were pointing to kill All Might. We've learned that Nomo creature is a man-made bioengineered monster with multiple quirks designed to rival All Might. Ren's clone informed them. Yeah, that's what that villain said, but the multiple quirks thing's in news to us, Aizawa said as he didn't like what he was hearing at all. The real question is how many quirks does that beast possess? Sila asked with narrow eyes. Then another explosion drew the attention of everyone in the plaza to see Scorpina getting out of her prison and standing up with a hand on her stomach. UDMN, Etherius B. Scorpina growled through her teeth and winced from the overwhelming pain. I'm going to make you regret that. TCH, she's more trouble than I originally thought, Sila said, clicking her tongue in annoyance. Scorpina here too. That's just great. The clone said sarcastically with his eyes narrowed at the Ranger villains. Mr. Aizawa and Vlad King, I suggest you suit up now. Once you two become Rangers we might actually stand a chance at beating these F-airs. He suggested to them. After hearing the clone's suggestion, Aizawa and Vlad King looked at their respective devices, then at each with serious expressions across their faces before nodding to one another, and placing the morphers on their wrists. You ready to take this to a new league, Vlad? Aizawa asked seriously as he could feel a rush of determination to keep his students safe no matter the cost. Oh, I born ready for this, Eraser. Vlad King said with his own determination. Just what are you doing? Tomura said, seeing the two pros equipping themselves with some kind of items. Equipping yourselves with special items will not change anything. What's those are? Scorpina said before her eyes widened in shock to see that they had morphers. Don't tell me they're about to morph. It's morphin' time. The two pro heroes shouted together. Dino Thunder, power up. Ha! Aizawa shouted while crossing his arms together before moving both his arms forward in front of him, then inserts the key into the Brachiomorpher. Vlad King twisted both of his wrists as they conducted red electricity to bring out his Zeonizers with his hands glowing red. Zero Ranger 5, red. Vlad King shouted while lifting his right arm in the air and then his left arm to cross together, before moving them downward as he had his arms spread wide open, and then he crosses them together with his right arm over his left as the Zeonizers were brought together to activate the morpher. Morphing sequence, Dino Thunder and Zeo. Aizawa turns the lock on the morpher as the mouthpiece closed with its eyes glowing. Aizawa's body was covered in a white suit, then he held his left arm up to his side as the Dino Thunder symbol suddenly appears on his chest. Aizawa then jumps into the air to do a back flip while black pieces of the Dino Thunder suit were forming onto him from his neck to feet before he lands back on the ground on one knee and his left fist on the floor, as it cracks with lava coming out. As he stood up, Aizawa's helmet formed on his head while the Brachio Zord roared in the background with lava erupting around the Zord, all while Aizawa was striking poses. A lad on the left Zeonizer opens up as Vlad King crossed his arms near his face with red electricity coming out of his morpher forming into a star and brought his arms down to his side. The green digital energy covered his whole body to form his ranger suit. Morphing sequence end. Brachio power, Black Dino Ranger. Aizawa shouted while moving both of his arms to his left side and then quickly moving them to the right to pose. His suit is primarily black with gold diamonds on his arms and legs. He has gold diamond shoulder guards, a belt, wristbands, and a gold dinosaur footprint logo on his chest. His helmet has a black visor in the shape of a Brachiosaurus mouth, slit lavender eyes with a horn-like structure, and a red slit on it. Stronger than before, Red Zeo Ranger. Vlad King shouted while placing his right hand in the air with the other handball into a fist near his chest before striking a pose. He wore a suit that was dominantly red except for the shoulder area of the torso. It was white with a golden section in between. The gold had ancient glyphs across it. The belt had two weapons holstered and the buckle was circular with different shapes, a star in the middle, an upside-down triangle at the top, a circle to the left, a square on the right, and finally two bars down in the bottom. His red helmet had a black star-shaped visor and mouth mold. Nice. Ren's clone said while pumping his fist in excitement. Interesting, Sila commented, looking at their ranger forms. Whoa, this power is awesome. I didn't think morphing could feel this good. The Red Zeo Ranger said, marveling at his transformation while clenching his fist. Nothing is going to lie, but this feels pretty DMN good right now. The Black Dino Ranger said in awe at the insane amount of power he was feeling. The two villains were also shocked by this too, as they didn't expect an outcome like this from the two pro heroes. What the hell is going on? They can change into those ridiculous costumes too? Tomura questioned in frustration. Great, more rangers. They're like cockroaches. Scorpina said, scowling at the new rangers. And both of them are using Tommy's ranger forms. It doesn't matter what kind of upgrades they have. We'll just have to kill them all. Tomura said angrily while balling up his fist in rage. For once we're in agreement, monkey. 2 more makes no difference. Scorpina shrugged her shoulders before snapping her fingers to summon more ranger foot soldiers that filled the plaza. Looks like there's ready for round 3. Vlad King said, getting into a combat stance. But this time, we're more than ready for them, Aizawa said while also getting in a stance. Sirs, me and Sila will handle these 3 for a bit while you 2 get familiarized with your ranger abilities first by taking care of the small fries. Ren's clone suggested with his gaze still on Scorpina, Tomura, and Nomo. Alright, we'll leave them to you both then until we clear away this trash. The Black Dino Ranger said. Nodding to his student while smirking under his helmet. It shouldn't take too long given our new abilities now. The Red Zero Ranger said, cracking his knuckles as he felt like he could do anything with his new powers. Just stay alive until then. Don't worry about us, it's going to take much more than them to bring us down. Ren's clone said back with a smirk of confidence. Sila, you'll handle Big and Ugly while I'll deal with Scorpina. He said to the Demoness. Very well, MSTR. I won't let you down. Sila said to her MSTR before meaning something else. Also MSTR, a word of caution. Be careful with that human over there. She said pointing at Tomura. It's important that you don't let him touch you. He's responsible for destroying the front gate to the school, and I'm pretty sure his quirk lets him decay anything he touches with his hands, as the more damage he deals depends on the longer his touching something. She informed her MSTR. Is that so? Thanks for the heads up. I'll be sure to be extra on my guard around him. Ren's clone said back with a nod before taking a fighting stance and at his foe with seriously. Really, you think stupid NPCs and a secret boss is going to get in our way? Tomura yelled as he was itching his neck enough to draw a little bit of BLD, whatever. If I can't kill that damned symbol of peace, I'll just have to settle for different targets until we're about to spawn the final boss into a fight. His gaze then turned to the pet beast until his command. Nomo, kill them all before All Might show up. The man stated while pointing at the heroes. The Nomo roared as he launched forward, ready to fight against the heroes, clones, and Aetherius. Tire them apart. Scorpina commented with the ranger grunts rushing forward at them too. Go! Ren's clone yelled out to the others as they sprained into action. Sila jumped at Nomu with the beast going to slam his fist into the demon again. She ducked under the punch and countered with her own punch straight into its stomach to no effect. The Aetherius wasn't surprised by this outcome but knew that it may have simply not been enough, so she decided to put more mass into her attacks before dodging another Nomu's punch at her by leaping in the air and over Nomu, aiming a kick at its exposed brain as Nomu avoided the kick. For something so massive, it moves pretty fast its size. Sila thought with an annoyed tone before launching a kick at the Nomu's head, sending the beast skidding back on the floor before using macro to launch some trees and boulders at Nomu's as her attacks still didn't affect the creature. Immediately upon landing, Sila had to contort her body in ways that would have broken a baseline human to avoid a barrage of strikes from Nomu, dodging, jumping, and flipping around in a display of acrobatic skill that would put pretty much any gymnast, even a quirked one, to shame. That wasn't to say that Aetherius was fighting completely defensively. Sila launched more than her fair share of attacks, however, Nomo didn't seem to register any of them. It went beyond simple toughness, as considering the power of her strikes should be enough to punch through a steel plate with ease, her opponent should be at least registering the force them. Nomo didn't let up its assault and Sila didn't expect it to, so she raised her arms before crossing them together to block a punch from the creature, with the demon feeling the impact and was sent flying backward in a good direction. Sila immediately recovered by landing on her feet and saw Nomo charging at her once more, then sidesteps to the right while roundhouse kicking the creature in the back with enough force that it fell face first on the ground, and the Aetherius jumping back to see Nomo standing back up then resumed its assault. Aizawa rushed at a Cyclobot and kicked it in the chest floor of the robot, then he spun around for a roundhouse kick to knock away a henchman's spear move aim at him while shoving the grunt away to the side, before landing a solid punch on the putty's gut and making the creature fall backward on the ground. Then the Black Ranger proceeded to the next foe on his right side that was a Quantron swinging its blade at him, but Aizawa quickly raised his right arm to block the attack and pushed the weapon down, before immediately striking the Quantron's chest his hand, knocking the grunt down. After taking down his foe, the Black Ranger turned his head to the left side to notice a Tenga warrior coming at from the sky and countered by whacking the Tenga warrior in the face with his left forearm, before approaching both a Vivix and Batling who were about to launch a double assault on him. But Aizawa was much quicker to react to their attacks and then kicked both foot soldiers away with his left leg, then he raised the back of his forearms up to block two strikes from a Grinder and Putrid attacking him on both sides, as the Ranger countered with an elbow jab to the Grinder in the chest and uppercut the Putrid the jaw, right before spinning around to perform another roundhouse kicking on another Quantron and Vivix attacking the man from behind with his leg hitting their weapons aimed at him, which sends the two crushing towards the ground. Then Aizawa turned his attention back in front and saw more grunts and reckless charges at the Ranger in an attempt to take him down, as the Black Dino Ranger immediately acted. Hiya! The Black Dino Ranger yelled while rushing at the enemy with another Tenga warrior attacking from below. But Aizawa took advantage of this by jumping over the second Tenga warrior, while hopping off its back to leap towards a second Batling and drove a drop kick the grunt in the chest, making sparks fly off the Batling's body and knocking it down near some more Ranger grunts. Then more waves of foot soldiers came at the Black Ranger, finding them off as best he could, as Aizawa kicked a second Grinder in the chest back and then ducked under an assault from a second Putrid's club from hitting him, while swiftly moving over to the right side where a second putty was standing to grab the creature by its left arm and following up with a kick to its stomach, which makes the creature bend forward before finishing the putty with a punch to its back. Then Aizawa glances back to a second henchman rushing at him with its spear before countering with a low sweep to the henchman's legs that sent the grunt flying across the battlefield and crushing HRD on its back. I know I shouldn't be saying this, but I'm actually enjoying this right now. Aizawa started with a tiny grin at his new abilities before taking another fighting stance. As the Black Ranger took a battle stance, he heard someone coming at him from behind again before turning around to see a second Cyclobot jumping at the hero and trying to whack him with its weapon, but Aizawa blocked the hit by raising his left forearm and sent the robot with a kick to the chest. But before the new Ranger could get a moment of rest, he noticed more enemies surrounding him in the dozen and knew he had to change up his tactics if he wanted to end this quickly. Let's try something new. Braccio staff. Aizawa shouted while pulling his staff out and holding it up crossed over his forearms. The Black Dino Ranger then dashes at the Ranger villains at an incredible speed and uses his staff to start striking down every foe in his line of sight with a level skill that he did possess until now before morphing. Aizawa swung his staff at a Vivix, then proceeded to both Grinder and Putty in a single slash before moving on to Henchman and hitting the grunt twice with his Braccio staff, as the Black Ranger didn't let up on his assault and went to face the next target that was closest to him. He then takes out Tenga Warrior with a quick strike and turns around to cut down a Cyclobot, before blocking a Quantron's blade strike with his staff and finishing the grunt off by roundhouse to the rib that knocks it away. After that the ranger ran over to another henchman and swiftly swung his staff down on the grunt. Aizawa then used his staff to block another weapon aimed at him from a batling before pushing the batling's sword aside to immediately slash the grunt, and then he turned to slash his weapon Putrid and another cyclobot coming at him from behind. Then the Black Ranger turned back around to the other side while swinging his staff at another henchman to stop its spear before hitting him and stroking the henchman across the chest. Once Aizawa took care of his opponent, the Black Ranger turned to the left to see multiple enemies gather together and point their blasters at him before firing at the man, who both dodged and deflected the laser at him, then jumped out of the way by driving towards the floor and barrel rolling back on his feet as the Ranger knew what to do next. The Black Dino Ranger held up his Braccio staff upside down and then turned a dial on the weapon's hilt to a fire emblem, which made the emblem flash red for a brief moment. Braccio staff, fire strike. The Black Dino Ranger shouted as a wave of purple energy surrounded his body and weapon, while also holding up his Braccio staff in the air, before crouching down on one knee and jabbing the staff into the ground as the energy around him vanishes. Then the floor in front of him started to grow brighter and hotter, while the wave of energy in the earth was moving towards the creatures and underneath them, before the plume of flames erupted from the ground like a volcano, and knocked all the grunts up into the air before they blew up from the critical damage. "Okay, I can get used to this," Aizawa said in awe of his new ranger powers and rushed at more enemies to fight. Vlad King saw a group of enemies coming at him before quickly taking a stance and bravely charging at them, with a Vivix being the first to approach the Red Ranger and tried to punch him, but Vlad King stopped the punch by knocking it away while pushing the Vivix aside before moving on to the next grunt. Then a grinder swung its weapon only for the Red Zeo Ranger to knock it down to the ground along with the robot, then stopped another attack aimed at him by raising his right leg to kick away a batling's sword before throwing another kick from his right leg at an incoming Tenga warrior chest and knocks the creature backward into a number of other enemies as they fell down on the ground. The foot soldiers didn't stop their assault with more running at the ranger as Vlad King scratched his right arm out to punch a putty square in the face floored the grunt, and then the Red Ranger used his left palm to block a Putrid's club from hitting him and send it away before high-kicking a Cyclobot that tried to attack him next but failed. Then Vlad King delivers another strong kick toward a Quantron on his right side while taking it out, and Henchman thrusts a spear at him only for the Red Ranger to block the attack with his right forearm and then swiftly counterstrike with a karate chop to the Henchman's stomach before chopping it back neck that sends the grunt to the floor. The Red Zeo Ranger immediately moves on to another henchman running at him on the right side for an attack and counters with a swift kick to the grunt's chest which takes it out, as he is then karate chops another Putrid on the back neck with enough force to floor the grunt in an instant before quickly blocks another sword strike from Quantron by using his left hand to slap the blade away, and then the man threw a solid straight punch forward into the face a second grinders, which knocks the robot on its back. Soon a second Vivix rushed at the Ranger next for an attack, only for Vlad King to palm strike at the creature's weapon to send the Vivix running past him and then proceeded to right kick another batling in the chest, before the Ranger landed another kick on a approaching putty that tried to hit him and send it flying into a number of enemies, which knocks them all tumble towards the ground. Fighting these monsters just got a heck of a lot more easier, after changing into these costumes. The Red Zeo Ranger stated with a smirk before noticing more villains coming at him. With the enemy getting closer to him, the Red Ranger stepped towards the left to dodge a second Cyclobot that tried to hit him before grabbing onto the robot's arm to hold it in place and then spinning his body around to throw a right roundhouse kick towards third putty coming at him. Only for the putty to duck under the Ranger's kick in time, but Vlad King used his right leg to quickly kick at the grunt again for a second time and this time succeeded in landing a hit on its back with the putty being knocked away, then the Red Ranger instantly kicking at a 3 Quantron in the chest on his other side and taking it down. Then Vlad King looked back at the Cyclobot he was still holding on to before flipping it to the ground with force that the Cyclobot's body started sparking tons of electricity from the damage it had taken, as Vlad King took another fighting stance ready for the next enemy. "Man, these freaks never give up." Vlad King said that even though he had out their numbers, there were still a lot more of them to take care of. "I guess it's time to bring out the big guns." he said while pulling out the weapon from his left holster. Zeo Power Pod Sword. He shouted while extending the weapon's blade and swinging it a few times before taking a combat stance. Both the Red Ranger and the third grinder swung their weapons against each other, which stopped their attacks before the two pulled away from one another. Vlad King reacted quickly, then grinder and stroked his blade across the grunt's stomach, taking it out of the fight. Then the hero moves on to a third cyclobot and uses his pod sword block to a strike coming at him, before spinning around to cut down the cyclobot with a downward slash. Then a third henchman aimed its spear at the Red Ranger, but Vlad King swiftly swung his blade upwards to change the spear trajectory from piercing him and brought his blade straight back down on the henchman, which takes care of the grunt for good. After that, the Red Zeo Ranger held his weapon with both hands and started cutting down the remaining enemies surrounding him, as their bodies began to discharge sparks of electricity before exploding to death. When the smoke cleared, some of the grunts began firing laser blasts at the Red Ranger, who dodged the blasts and explosions on the ground by rolling over to the right side and standing straight back up on one knee, before he grabbed the second weapon on his right holster. Zeo Laser Pistol. The Red Zeo Ranger shouted while bringing out his blast with his right hand and pointing it at the foot soldiers, before pulling the trigger. Then the Zeo laser pistol started rapidly firing a concentrated beam of red energy towards the grunts and instantly stroked down every single creature with sparks flying off their bodies upon hitting their marks. Once they were whipped out from his sight, the Red Ranger put away his weapons before immediately blocking a punch from a third putty striking him from behind by grabbing the grunt's fist, and then Vlad King looked back at the putty before punching it in the chest and following up with a swift elbow jabs to the chest that takes it down. The Red Ranger wasn't out of the woods yet, as he did a backward handspring to evade another attack on him, before hitting a third putrid next to him in the chest with his left arm, knocking the grunt down with it flipping forward on its back. And then Vlad King jumped backwards high in the air while getting some distance away from the monsters that surrounded him. Had enough? Vlad King asked the grunt sarcastically, as he really knew the answer with the remaining foot soldiers charged at him. Guess not. Okay. He stated before dashing towards the enemy at a quick pace with grunts and leaped straight forward in the air with his left leg extended outward, as his leg started to glow bright red with energy. Zeo Power Flying Kick. He shouted out loud while launching himself at the group of monsters like a speed bullet and blitzing through the group before their bodies started discharging blue electricity and then an explosion in a massive ball of fire, which sent some of them scattering around the battlefield in a different direction with the Ranger skidding his feet on the floor to come to a halt. Meanwhile, as the pros and Sila were dealing with the horde of foot soldiers and that Nomo monster, Ren's clone fought his way through a few grunts of his own before making his way to Scorpina, as he watched his opponent take a battle stance and pulling out his dragon dagger. Well, hello there, little Ranger, Scorpina said with a sweet tone but with an evil grin on her face, making the Ranger narrow his eyes at her. This is your only chance to walk away, Scorpina. Because I will fight you if I have to. The clone firmly warned the evil woman, who only laughed in response. It has been a long time since I have got to have any kind of fun, Scorpina said while raising her sword above her shoulder. I have been looking forward to fighting a Power Ranger again. Then I guess we're doing this after all. Ren's clone said with seriousness before getting into a fighting stance and holding his weapon in a reverse hand grip, as the clone could see no other way to resolve this problem other than fighting her. They squared off against each other with the both of them tense as they waited for the other to make the first move. Ren's clone rushed forward and swung his dagger, as Scorpina moved her blade to block his attack and the two both started to exchange blows with each other. Ren's clone avoided and countered all Scorpina's sword swings before ducking and turning to avoid the kick aimed at his face. He stood across from the monster and struck once with two slashes from his weapon, making Scorpina block them, then swung low at the boy as the clone jumped high over the strike and the golden-armored woman with a front flip. When Ren's clone lands back on his ground, he turns around to block another sword strike from Scorpina and the two end up pushing against each other. Even if your teachers are Rangers now, we are not intimidated by them, Scorpina told him with a snarl while glaring at him over their locked weapons. Ren's clone struggled and pushed Scorpina's sword over his head for a moment before being able to push her sword towards the ground, and then looked at Scorpina with his own glare. Then you've obviously never taken one of Aizawa's pop quizzes or Vlad's fitness tests, Ren's clone quipped back before they pushed themselves away from each other. Then they charged right back at one another to continue their battle. Central Plaza, afternoon. Meanwhile, once Midoriya, Tsuyu, Shiozaki, Kanoko, and Mineta escaped the flood zone, they landed near the shore of the Central Plaza. We made it back to dry land, and it looks as if there are no enemies in sight, Midoriya said as they ended the pool of water. Oh, thank goodness. Mineta said with a sigh of relief as they were finally out of danger for the moment. If we had to fight more villains after escaping that death trap, then I would have lost it for sure. I wouldn't get too comfortable if I were you, Mineta. There's still a villain attack going on right now. Tsuyu said, reminding him about the danger they were still in. And who's to say that more enemies won't abuse us out of the blue? Please don't remind me. Mineta complained in terror. In any case, our priority now is to get to safety. Maybe go to the others. If we go along to the coast to the exit, we'll avoid the Central Plaza where all the fighting is happening. It might not seem like a good plan, but it's the best we have. Midoriya said while pointing towards where the entrance was located. But I'm still worried about Mr. Aizawa, Vlad King, and Sila. They're still fighting against all those villains alone. Shiozaki said while the group turned their sights at the square, which was rolling the battle. They could hear the sounds of explosions and saw bright light going off in the far distance where both their teachers and Sila were dealing with the villains at the Central Plaza. But they can take care of themselves, can't they? After all, our teachers are pro-heroes and Sila is a former villain with a quirk that can control others. Mineta said with a hopeful tone. The problem is not just that Mineta, Midoriya said counter-arguing with the small boy's words. Ranger villains are there along with those other villains. Our teachers may be skilled pro-heroes and Sila is powerful too in her own right, especially with her Marco curse, but the enemies they're fighting aren't like regular villains. It's three fighting an entire army. Sooner or later, they'll get overwhelmed. But what about the help Kuroka is getting from the school? Mineta replied back with a scared tone. I'm when the other heroes get her dash. It still won't be enough, Midoriya said, cutting him off with a hard glare. You can't think of Ranger enemies like ordinary villains. Also to remind you all, those other villains have a weapon that can kill All Might. He stated seriously to them. Tsuyu, Shiozaki, Kanoko, and Mineta understood what the Ranger was trying to say before he continued speaking. Look, you four need to head to the exit without me while I go and meet up with my team to help the teachers take care of those villains, Midoriya said as he took a step forward and gazed at the horizon to where the battle was happening. Midoriya, do you think this is a good idea? Kanoko said in a worried tone as she didn't want to see Midoriya throw himself into any more danger. Kanoko, I'll be fine. It's your safety that I care about. So please, stay safe. Midoriya said with a kind but serious look. I still think this is a bad idea, Shiozaki commented out loud. You're probably right, but I know that I don't want to sit around knowing that the teachers and Sila are dealing with those villains alone, let alone against those monsters, Midoriya said while turning his back to the others and walking towards where the fighting is at before saying something else to them. Go on and meet the others at the entrance. As he walked, Tsuyu, Shiozaki, and Kanoko stared at the Ranger, as the three girls were left admiring his heroism and determination to become a great hero. They'd already admired him after seeing his lead make it out of the flood zone alive, but after that, the girls saw him as a hero. Midoriya, Tsuyu, Shiozaki, and Kanoko thought as they watched their man leave to fight the villains. But then out of nowhere, multiple explosions suddenly goes off in front of Midoriya with him nearly hit by a surprise abuse while being launched backward by the shockwave of the flames and the other students being shocked at what just occurred before them. Ack! Midoriya screamed out before being knocked on his back in pain. Midoriya. Tsuyu, Shiozaki, Kanoko, and Mineta yelled out in horror at what happened to him and immediately ran to their classmate's side to see if he was alright. My word! Are you already? Shiozaki asked in concern, as they gathered around him. I'm alright. That explosion just took me by surprise is all. Midoriya assured while pulling himself up with the help of the others. Are you sure? Kanoko asked as she and Shiozaki held him up. I'm fine, it's okay, Midoriya said while removing their hands from his body before he and the others' attention were drawn by the sound of someone laughing out loud behind the smoke and flames from the earlier explosion. Well. It looks like I've found myself a couple of pipsqueak humans for me to destroy. An evil menacing said behind the smoke and fire, as it freaked out some of the students there except for Midoriya. Oh no! It's another bad guy. Mineta screamed in horror while moving behind Midoriya, to hide out of sight from the danger. Who's there? Show yourself right now this instant. Shiozaki demanded. It'll be my pleasure, human. The voice said before stepping out of the smoke cloud to appear in front of the UA students. The hero course students saw a large robotic rook/castle/tank-based warrior, holding a very large watchtower-shaped sword for combat in their right. His name is Boom Tower, the robotic general of the Void family. No freaking way. Boom Tower? Midoriya shouted with his eyes wide in disbelief to see the evil robotic general back alive and here causing utter havoc in his world. You were brought back too. That's right, Ranger. I'm back, better than ever, and here to deliver the boom. Boom Tower declared while smacking his fist onto his robotic body. Concerning that you know who this guy is, I take it that he's one of those Ranger enemies you were talking about before, Midoriya? Tsuyu asked her boyfriend calmly, as she could see the troublesome expression on his face. Yeah, he's one of them all right. Midoriya said with a stern expression while not taking his eyes off his foe. His name is Boom Tower. He was an enemy general that fought the Dino Fury Rangers before they defeated him, and definitely, someone you don't want to take lightly in a fight. He informed his classmates, much to their shock and horror. An enemy general? Shiozaki said before looking back at the evil robot with a worrisome look. Then he must be an extremely powerful foe indeed. To think we would encounter such a dangerous villain, Tsuyu said, now feeling a little concerned about their safety. Why yeah, he definitely looks big and scary for sure, Kanoko commented while shaking in fear from the new information about this villain. Who cares about that? We need to run before he kills us all. Mineta cried out as he wanted to run away from this monster. Sorry, but none of you brats are going anywhere. Not before I take you out first. Boom Tower shouted before holding up his claymore with it covered in indigo energy. Watch out! Midoriya yelled out to warn the others as he saw Boom Tower charging up an attack meant for them. Boom Wave! Boom Tower shouted while swinging his claymore downward to cause and send several pillars of purple shockwaves toward the hero students. Midoriya and Tsuyu quickly reacted to the incoming attack, with the former grabbing onto Shiozaki and Kanoko by their arms while the latter snatches up Mineta in her arms, as they leaped high over both the purple shockwaves and Boom Tower with the attack missing them. When the 5 students landed back on the floor behind Boom Tower, Midoriya immediately let go of his classmates while turning to face the Ranger villain as he glared hard at the evil robot, with Boom Tower turning around towards the students doing the same in return. Head back to the entrance, guys. I'll stay back and hold off Boom Tower. Midoriya told the others, much to their surprise. Wait, what? You can't be serious, Midoriya. Mineta cried out, expressing his fear. Why would you want to stay here and fight this guy alone? Because I'm the one he's after and one of the only few people here who stands a real chance at fighting him, Midoriya explained as he got into a fighting stance. Now get going. He told them one last time and then ran towards Boom Tower. Boom Tower also ran forward towards the Ranger, as the two began to fight one another with Boomtower swinging his claymore at Midoriya, who is agilely dodging the sword strike and launching a fury of blows that the Ranger villain was tanking without much issue. Mineta began. But what about Dash? Mineta, Tsuyu said, cutting him off, while he turned her way to see the frog girl giving him a calm look. We'll only get in his way if we stay here any longer. Let's just do as Midoriya says and head back to the entrance. Tsuyu. You can't be serious right now. Shiozaki said, shocked at the fact that she wanted to leave him behind to fight that villain alone. What if he gets really hurt by that villain? Kinoko agreed while worrying about the boy's safety and feared that something would happen to him. Exactly. Mineta said as he begged Tsuyu to get Midoriya to stay. Who'll protect us? Look, I don't like it either, but I have to trust Midoriya's judgment, Tsuyu said, sighing at what she was thinking right now before continuing. Like Midoriya said, that villain is more focused on him than us, which is something I think Midoriya wants. We should listen to him and get out of here now while we still have the chance. She explained to them. They were stunned at hearing Tsuyu's words and fate in Midoriya's strength in beating Boomtower alone. Then after a couple of seconds of intense staring they began to speak again. I understand. We'll go. Shiozaki said, steeling herself, as the Vine girl didn't like it, but the way Tsuyu said, it reassured her. On Lord, please give Midoriya the strength to defeat this villain. She prayed with her hands clasped together. Oh okay, I'll put my trust into Midoriya too, Kinoko said quietly in agreement. Rib bit. Tsuyu croaked quietly with a nod before speaking up again. Now let's get moving. We need to get out of here before that villain notices us. The students came to an agreement and proceeded to the front entrance, not scared anymore, besides Mineta. They couldn't afford to be scared, not after Midoriya placed their trust in them. Another large ground tremor made the group look back to see Midoriya throwing Boomtower HRD on the floor, as he was holding his own against the Ranger villain. I guess he knows what he's doing after all, Tsuyu said, looking back at the fight while walking away with the others. Kick his butt, man. Mineta shouted over to his classmate. Hit him in the ball. Mineta, please don't shout and use such vulgar language. We don't know to want that villain to put a target on our backs as well. Shiozaki tried to tell him. What are you getting so worried about, Shiozaki? Midoriya is distracting that villain. We'll all be fine once we're in the clear. Mineta said confidently without worry, as he wasn't the one fighting. I don't know, something about this whole thing doesn't seem right, Kinoko said, getting a bad feeling about this. I agree, Ribbit. Let's get to safety first before trumping fate. Tsuyu commented as well. Mineta rolled his eyes at that. Come on, you guys too. You shouldn't worry about that pretty little head of yours. He said to them. As Purple Ball Head made that careless comment, Boomtower got up from the floor while groaning in pain. He saw the other students leaving the area and immediately acted to prevent their escape. I don't think so, kiddos, Boomtower said before holding his hand up to summon a squad of foot soldiers. Stop them. Then dozens of ranger grunts appeared around the plaza, making Tsuyu, Shiozaki, Kinoko, and Mineta stop in place while blocking their path to the staircase. Mineta screamed like a little girl at the sight of the ranger enemies. We're completely surrounded. He panicked. Ribbit. Tsuyu could only croak in worry. They've surrounded us. Shiozaki yelled out at their escape route being blocked. Kinoko didn't say anything but looked scared and shaking like a rabbit while tears fell from her covered eyes. After hearing his friends screaming, Midoriya looked over to see they were surrounded by dozens of foot soldiers and knew he needed to help them. No, stop! Midoriya yelled while rushing over to his classmate's aid, before leaping back to dodge a Quantron slashing its weapon at him, as he noticed that the grunts started to swarm around him and block his path from the others. DMN, it. He cursed before the Quantron swung its blade at the ranger again. Only for Midoriya to stop the blade with his bare hands before it hit him and hurled the Quantron away on the floor, as a Vivix ran up from behind his backside to strike down the boy, but Midoriya turned around to face the Vivix and also snatched the grunt's weapon bare-handed to floored another creature as well. Then the ranger had noise and shifted his head back to see a putty running up from behind to grab him before countering the grunt with a shoulder throw to the ground. Midoriya glanced back up to see more foot soldiers approaching and stood his ground by taking a combat stance, as a Tenga warrior was first to appear in front of the ranger and swung at him, only for Midoriya to catch the attack with his left hand before the monster twisting arm around, while moving behind the Tenga warrior to hold it in place and taking care of the feather brain with a kick to its back. Then it was a Cyclobot's turn with the robot charging in at the ranger from behind, which Midoriya swiftly countered by kicking backward at the grunt before dealing with a batling next, as Foot Soldier tried to hit the ranger but Midoriya dodged its sword strikes and executed a chain of combo punches and kicks that grounded the batling. It didn't take too long for a grinder to step up next and attack the green-haired boy with its weapon, as Midoriya grabbed a hold of the evil robot first and forcible turned the grinder to snap its neck, making the machine's head spark and fall forward to the floor. Then he started dodging. A putrid wildly swung its club at him while slightly backing up and counters by grabbing the putrid's arm before immediately striking back with an elbow jab to the face. Suddenly out of the blue, a henchman moved its spear at the ranger as Midoriya used the putrid's body as a shield to block the henchman attack and destroy the putrid in the process, and Midoriya wasn't not to spiral kick the henchman in the chest to take it down for good. Despite taking care of most of the horde, Midoriya saw no ending to the enemies coming at him and activated his quirk at 10% of its power before swinging a massive punch at the enemies in front of him, which created a huge shockwave explosion that dealt Ranger grunts major blow as they flew around in the air. "Move aside," Midoriya demanded while taking down several more Ranger grunts in a slip second and moved towards his endangered classmates before he got confronted by the unpleasant foe. "Not so fast, Ranger," Boom Tower shouted before getting in front of Midoriya and stopping him in places. "The only thing you should be more concerned about is fighting me. DMNU, Boom Tower," Midoriya yelled out in anger before rushing at the Ranger villain with his sword raised and swinging it. "Get out of my way." Boom Tower counters the strike by swinging his claymore into the Ranger's sword, which creates tons of sparks and small shockwaves from the sheer force of their combined blow. "Not going to happen, kid," Boom Tower said with a gleeful tone, as he was able to keep Midoriya at bay from his classmates. "Now watch as your little friends meet their end. DMN it." Midoriya cursed and glared hatefully at the monster in front of him. While Midoriya was trying to get past Boom Tower, the other students were doing their best against the Ranger grunts. Midoriya wasn't kidding about these creatures being different from regular villains, Tsuyu said while using her long tongue to whiplash enemy after enemy away, as she used frog-like agility to move to leap around the monster and nearly avoid their strikes at her. "They just keep getting back up no matter how many times I hit them." Rib bit. She then acrobatically kicks down several Ranger soldiers. "Yes, these unholy beasts are more formidable than I thought," Shiozaki stated, crossing herself, as her vine hair came alive and began lashing out against the grunts. "May there be mercy from the Lord's judgment." She had some Ranger grunts suspended in the air, tied hands and feet, unable to move from the large vines holding them in place. Unfortunately for the two girls, the Ranger grunts would immediately recover from being stoked down and free themselves from their vine prisons, then go back on their assault on the students. As Tsuyu and Shiozaki were fighting back the incoming horde of monsters, Kanoko and Mineta both stopped frozen in fear and terrified eyes widened as the two processed what they were seeing, and indecision began to root them in place. The two students were too afraid to even move a muscle, as they stood there and watched their two classrooms were fighting to protect the both of them from the villains. "Why?" Mineta and Kanoko thought while tearfully staring at their three classmates fighting. "How are they this brave?" But despite their best efforts, the two frightened students saw that Tsuyu and Shiozaki were starting to struggle to hold off the endless number of foes and knew it was only a matter of time before they got too tired after using their powers, and then those monsters will kill them all. "Even though they're as scared as I am." Mineta thought, as his mouth and face quivered while his breaths came rapidly. Even though they're outnumbered, they're still going through with this. Even though we're probably in the worst situation possible, they still do not hesitate to act. Kanoko thought as the girl's mind at what she was witnessing. They knew that they had to do something to help them, but their bodies just wouldn't listen to them, as all Kanoko and Mineta could do was tremble in fear over their own crowdedness while their classmates were fighting with everything they had in order to keep them alive. And knew this made them feel even more pathetic in themselves. What the heck, guys? How do you do it? Mineta mentally said, tightening his fists as his arms shook in frustration. They're acting so cool, and I'm not helping at all. We're in a crappy situation. And everyone is still giving it their all, but despite that, I'm still acting like my usual scaredy-cat self. Kinnick thought while feeling ashamed of herself after Midoriya believed in her so much. As the two students were mentally kicking themselves, their classmates bravely somehow inspired both Mineta and Kanoko to push past their own fears, as Mineta placed his hand on his ball hair and Kanoko took out 2 spray bottles. This didn't go unnoticed by Tsuyu and Shiozaki, with the two girls pausing for a moment to glance back at their two classmates before Mineta and Kanoko let out mighty screams and ran headfirst at the dangerous foes, as they found new motivation within themselves. Ah! Take this, you villains! Eat my sticky ball! Mineta yelled as he threw his ball at Grunts. Ah, have some mushy mushrooms! Kanoko yelled as she sprayed her bottles in the air to release mushroom spores. The balls stuck onto Ranger foot soldiers as they were having trouble moving their bodies, but before they could remove them, all around them, pavement, metal, flesh, everything was turning into a mushroom. The combined assault of Mineta and Kanoko left the Ranger grunts covered in purple balls stuck and mushrooms that trapped them in place. Stand in the far back from the danger zone, Tsuyu and Shiozaki were both awestruck at their two classmates' sudden bravery as they managed to stop those creatures and possibly save their lives, with the two girls smiling brightly at them. We managed to stop them. Not too shabby. You guys are amazing. The both of you. Tsuyu said, complimenting both Kanoko and Mineta for their bravery and quick thinking. Yes, the Lord would be happy to know of your heroic actions today, especially you, Mineta, Shiozaki said as Mineta's head was bleeding while still crying and Kanoko was crying joyfully, with them all escaping straight to the stairs. We did it. Kanoko said while breathing heavily as she felt a sense of pride rising up inside of herself. Haha. I know I can act cool too if I tried, Mineta whispered while laughing a little bit at how cool he looked right now. Meanwhile, Midoriya looked over to see the four students making their way to the staircase without the Ranger grunts pursuing them, while they were trapped by Mineta and Kanoko's quirks. They managed to get away, Midoriya said, sighing in relief while watching the others leave to safety, before getting his attention back on an irritated Boom Tower. Now I can focus on taking you down, he declared while gripping his blade tightly. Whatever, it's not like I was interested in taking care of small fries like them anyway, since you're the one I'm really after, Ranger. Boom Tower said, scoffing, as he wasn't interested in those humans when his real target was in front of him. Then here I came, Boom Tower. Midoriya shouted while taking a leaping at the evil monster and swung his blade, as Boom Tower blocked the strike with his left forearm. USJ entrance, afternoon. Meanwhile, back up at the staircase to the front entrance, the other students that didn't get sucked in the portal were at the exits. They would go ahead and head out. But with Kurogiri, Thrax, and Ranger foot soldiers around, their hopes of escaping were dimmed as 13, Ida, Mina, Juzo, Shoji, Uraraka, Siro, and Sato were too busy dealing with the Ranger grunts, while Awaze was fighting with Thrax to provide help to the others, and Kurogiri was still standing there keeping watch on the battle in front of him to make sure no one would escape the building. Keep fighting, everyone. We just need to hold out until backup arrives. 13 yelled out to the students fighting the Ranger grunts, as she was also having trouble fighting them too, due to her lack of experience in close combat fighting. That's easier said than done, teach. Zero replied back while using his tape to slow down the foot soldiers, as they were breaking or cutting them apart. Yeah, no matter what we do to them, these guys aren't going down. Mina shouted while spraying acid at a cyclobot, but barely did anything to it. And our quirks are barely slowing them down either. Juzo said while softening the stone floor to restrict their movements, but the grunts were about to free themselves without a problem. It's not just here too. These creatures are swarming all over the place. Shoji said in a worried tone as he was the only one who wasn't fighting with the others, protecting him while using his power to create several eyes and ears on the tip of his tentacles to look and hear all over the factory. When this is over, I'm definitely asking Deku to teach me how to fight like him. Uraraka commented as she was taking the gravity away from some of the grunts, while also doing her best to dodge their attacks. Seems these things are more troublesome than they look. Sato said while gritting his teeth to hold back a putrid and battling. Don't lose heart, everyone. Ida shouted to his fellow hero students while kicking away both Vivix and Putty. We will survive this no matter what. So let's give it our all as UA students. He stated before moving out of the way from a grinder assault. Meanwhile, not too far from them, Owaze and Thrax were still fighting before Thrax launched a beam of lightning from his staff, as Owaze jumped back out of the way in time, then the ranger swiftly threw blue shurikens at the evil monster. Thrax used his staff to deflect each shuriken, as they stalked to the ground and Owaze landed a few feet back from his enemies before the sound of screaming drew the ranger's attention back towards his friends and teacher. It sounds like they need my help, Owaze whispered in frustration while glancing back at his classmates in concern. I would be more concerned about yourself, Ranger, before worrying about your friends. Thrax taunted the Ranger, much to Owaze's irritation. The Hero Force Ranger only lets out a light growl in response before raising his blade and charging at Thrax once more, with Thrax pointing his staff forward and firing more laser blasts at him. Owaze waved through the assault by blocking and dodging while getting closer to Thrax, then swung his ninja star blade at Thrax, but he used his staff to stop the Ranger's attack and counter-strikes with it. The Ranger dodged the strike and counterblows to the right side as Thrax blocked the attack with his staff again, then Owaze swung upwards next only for Thrax to swing his staff at the boy too before the clash pushed both of them apart. You fight well for a newbie Ranger, Thrax complained to the Ranger. But unfortunately for you, it won't be enough to defeat me with years of experience. He said, glaring at the Ranger. I may be new at this Ranger stuff, but I make up for it with spirit, Owaze said with confidence while gripping his blade tightly. I can still beat your evil but into the floor if you're not careful. That remains me to be seen, young man. I'll crush you and your spirit to dust. Thrax said before pointing his staff at Owaze with it glowing a very dangerous color. Now die already. He then fired a powerful red laser beam from the tip of his staff. Owaze leans his body to the side as he passes by him and hits the three grunts that 13 was fighting with and vaporizes them on the spot, much to the heroine's surprise. Even heard a friendly fire, dude. Owaze jokingly said that the Ranger villain accidentally hit his soldiers by mistake. Now you're just irritating me. Thrax yelled out before using his staff to fire more laser beams at Owaze, who was narrowly evading each shot aimed at him. Shoji, Ida inquired his classmate's attention while moving back to him. Got them? Anything? Where is everyone? It looks like that mist villain was telling us the truth, Shoji replied back before explaining. They've been scattered across the USJ but everyone is still here. He said as everyone felt relief about that. But it looks like they're also fighting these creatures too. The boys said much to their concern. What do we do? Because things aren't looking good for us. Zero asked before 13 said something. The plan remains the same. We hold out until backup from the school arrives. 13 said as she was holding out hope until help arrived. Even if this is your only option, are you really foolish enough to strategize in front of your enemy? Kurogiri stated while getting their attention on him as the warp villain finally decided to act and use his quirk to try to shoot forward tendrils of dark clouds. "It won't matter if you know what we're planning or not when I'm done with you," 13 said, pointing an unlocked finger toward him and activating her quirk. Black hole. The space heroine began sucking the villain's mist into her finger with a great pulling force, hoping to stop Kurogiri from teleporting any more students away. Kurogiri slightly grunts in the effort as he tries to resist Black Hole's pull, but despite the dangerous position he was in, the warp villain remained calm and looked at the space heroine with a calculated glare. "Ah, Black Hole. The quirk that sucks up the matter and turns it to dust," Kurogiri observed. Despite bits of his body getting sucked into 13's finger, he sounded surprisingly calm. "Such an astounding power. However, you're a rescue hero, 13, skilled at saving people from disasters," the mist villain said as he opened a portal on himself and the effect of Black Hole went into the portal. "Consequently, that means you have little fighting experience or battlefield awareness," he stated to the rescue hero. Then suddenly, another portal appears from behind 13 without warning and the effect of her own quirk starts to affect her. 13 yelped as she was caught off guard by Kurogiri's surprise attack, making the space heroine get sucked in by her own power, much to the students around her horror as they gasped. "He opened a warp gate." 13 yelled out in shock while glancing back at the warp gate behind her. Kurogiri's eyes go a bit narrow, which could tell us that he is smirking, and then the back of 13's suit starts to tear apart while being sucked into the portal by the pull of her black hole, sending pieces of it to the portal and hurting 13 in the process. "How unfortunate. You've turned yourself to dust," Kurogiri mocked the hero as she hurt herself with her own quirk, while everyone on the stairs wore horrified expressions as they watched 13's body get ripped into spreads. The sucking from 13's finger stopped when she started to fall forward. "I'm sorry, but he got me," 13 could only weakly say as she fell to the ground and before passed out. 13. Mina yelled with tears coming from her eyes while seeing her teacher was down. Hearing Mina's scream made both Aways and Thrax stop fighting as they looked back to see what was happening, much to Away's horror and Thrax's pleasure to see that 13 was down. "No, 13. Aways cried out to his fallen teacher, as he saw Mina and Uraraka down on their knees to their fallen teacher. "Ha ha ha. Now that's hilarious. Be taken out by her own quirk. Some hero." Thrax laughed out loudly. Aways then left something inside of him span from seeing his unconscious teacher and the Ranger villain's laughter, as the Ranger felt uncontrollable rage erupt from within him. "You." Aways started to growl in anger. "You monsters." He shouted out in righteous fury, then pulled out his magic wand and pointed it straight at Thrax, whose guard was down from his launching. Udfus bet Hud. He cast a spell on him with his wand tip glowing blue. "Huh." Thrax stopped his laughter after Aways cast his spell as several sparkling lights surrounded him around, then he suddenly lost his footing and fell to the ground. "Ack!" He cried out in pain after falling off balance. Once Thrax was on the ground, Aways had no time to use his quirk to weld the Ranger villain to fuse Thrax's body on the floor with the metallic logs he'd been carrying around. "Ugh! You cursed Ranger!" Thrax shouted while trying to break free from the ground, and shocking the other there at what happened to him. "Thrax!" Kurogiri cried out to his trapped ally. Aways paid them no mind as his attention turned to his classmates fighting the foot soldiers, before pulling out his ninja blaster and pointing it directly at the group of monsters that were endangering his friends. "All of you, get down. Ninja blast." Aways told the other students and started rapidly firing laser blasts from his ninja blaster to shoot down monsters, while the 7 UA immediately ducked to the floor to avoid getting hit by another random shot. The damage they'd taken was so severe that sparks of electricity were generating all over the Ranger grunts' bodies before they exploded into ball of flames that left no trace of them behind, as the other students looked up at the aftermath to see the horde of monsters whipped out. "Oh no, he's gonna, not hit us? Uraraka blinked in confusion as they weren't hit. Whoa, he took them all out so fast, Zero said in awe at the Ranger's handiwork. Watch where you're shooting, Aways. Juzo shouted at him as all of the gray monsters were dead. That was very dangerous of you, Aways. Ida scolded him while chopping his arm. Unbelievable, Kurogiri thought as he watched the mob of monsters annihilated and Thrax gets restrained in the manner of seconds, by one child no less with narrowed eyes. UA students really are a cut above the rest. He thought as things were getting out of hand. Hey, Fart Cloud. You're next. Aways angrily yelled at Kurogiri while getting the villain's attention and pointing his ninja blaster at him. I'm going make you pay for what you did to 13. He declared firmly, taking everyone back by his sudden change in tone. So you wish to avenge your fallen teacher? Kurogiri addresses the Ranger. Amusing but still foolish, as you are a mere child against a foe with years of experience. The villain stated as he called for his power to silently envelop him and the black mist swirled about to attack the student. We'll see about that. Aways said before pulling out several blue shurikens and holding them in his left hand. Eat this. He then threw the blue shurikens at the rap villain. But blue shurikens went right through him and were absorbed into the black mist, as the mist began to surround Aways from all sides before he was engulfed by it. Attacks like that have no effect on me. Kurogiri said and began to use his power to warp the Ranger away. Now be gone. Aways. The other students there shouted in horror to watch as their Ranger classmate was then wrapped away by Kurogiri with the portal fading away. Such heroic nonsense, from a foolish youth, Kurogiri said while looking at the spot Aways was once standing at. At the very least, be grateful that you won't be able to see your friend's Drg. The rap villain was abruptly stopped in his speech and froze in their tracks when suddenly an unknown focus began to JRK around within the cloud of mist he was creating. The UA students looked in confusion as they heard more grunts coming from Kurogiri as he seemed to be struggling against something that brought the criminal to a halt. Has anyone ever told you, you talk too much? A flat voice said out of nowhere. This caused Ida, Mina, Juzo, Shoji, Uraraka, Zero, and Sato to immediately look back and saw Aways standing behind them with his glowing magic wand pointed at the villain, as he used ninja steel magic to freeze Kurogiri in place. Aways. The 7 students yelled out in joy and relief to see that their friend was alright. What? But how? Kurogiri yelled out in confusion as he heard the Ranger's voice behind him, even though he teleported him away. Dude, how were not you wrapped away like the others? We show that villain uses his quirk on you. Sato asked the boy who walked past them. It would have worked too, if not for my ninja ranger powers, Aways explained as he used the body replacement jutsu to avoid Kurogiri's assault and fool him. He's a ranger. How foolish of me for underestimating him. Kurogiri thought with his eyes widened in shock at what he just heard from the student. You impudent child. Release me at once. He demanded as he was still unable to move. How about I do this instead? Aways replied back with a glare while pointing his ninja blaster at the rap villain and firing several shots at him. But instead of them passing through the mist like last time, the laser blasts made physical contact with the rap villain as Kurogiri's yellow slits widened all the way from both shock and pain. Ha! Kurogiri yelled in pain as his neck brace was struck by the laser fire. He was able to hit my neck brace. He muttered out in pain. As Kurogiri was stunned by the pain, he felt the grip around his neck tighten as the metal collar began to bend and warp from the pressure. Kurogiri looked towards the one who would have the gall to grab him and saw it was Aways, who had an iron grip on his neck brace which the Ranger continued to dig his fingers further into the metal. Then Kurogiri's lightweight body got slammed into the ground by Aways, as the rap villain reeled from the pain and scrambled to fill his lungs with air. Burly arms began to constrict his chest with a force that would have made an anaconda green with envy. The rap villain looked around to see the other UA students, that were Juzo, Shoji, Shiro, Ida, and Sato, hovering over him and holding the villain down together with all of their strength, as the criminal found himself unable to move even a centimeter. "How did you know about my metal brace?" Kurogiri asked how the black-haired young man was able to figure out his weakness while being held down by the UA students. "When those 3 idiots attacked you, you prevented your collar from being attacked," Owaze replied coldly while keeping his hold on Kurogiri and holding his blaster at the rap villain's neck. "This metal brace around your neck is your weak spot, which means that only certain parts of you turn into that smoking warp gate. To cover that, you covered your entire body in that mist," he explained, which made the rap villain let out a low growl at his weakness being exposed by this mere child. Realization hit Kurogiri hard in the gut as a chill ran down his spine, making his body begin to shake as he remained on the floor by the Hero Force Ranger and Hero Course students. The villain himself didn't even know if he was shaking out of fear or anger, but in all honesty, it didn't matter. "You petulant, persistent, conniving children." Kurogiri growled lowly as he tried to get up, only for Owaze to blast the villain's neck at point-blank range. "Arrgh." This caused him to yell out in pain and slam against the ground once more so as to be silent. "You move or create any more portals, then you'll get another one of Theses." Owaze threatens the villain with his finger on the trigger. "Yeah. That's right, but give him a reason. It doesn't have to be a good one, but give him one." Shiro taunted as he held the villain down to the ground. "You ain't going anywhere. Not until the heroes arrive." Juzo added in with a grin. "You're going to regret hurting 13, Shoji said in agreement while glaring at the down villain. "Well said, everyone." Ida yelled out proudly to his fellow heroes in training. "You won't cause us any more harm, villain." "Alright, Owaze." Mina cheered in glee. "Way to go, guys." Uraraka agreed loudly, holding up a fist. While Kurogiri was subdued by the Hero Course students, Thrax grew tired and frustrated by his retrains, before using his evil energy to release a red shockwave from his body that was strong enough to free himself from his prison but also traveled over to the other students who was holding down Kurogiri. When Owaze, Ida, Juzo, Shoji, Shiro, and Sato noticed the approaching shockwave, it was already too late before they were hit and knocked back into the air, as the male students cried out and skidded back on the floor right next to 13, Mina, and Uraraka. "Guys!" Mina yelled out to the down boys. "Are you all alright?" Uraraka cried out in concern, as they groaned and picked themselves up from the ground. "Yeah, but I am definitely going to feel that in the morning," Sato muttered in pain. "I've been hit by worse," Shiro said while wincing. "DMN, that other villain took us by surprise," Shoji said while rubbing his hurting head. "Stay alert everyone. This isn't over just yet," Ida said as their attention went back to the villains. Kurogiri and Thrax got up from the ground and soon recovered as they stand next to each other. "Thank you for your assistance, Thrax," Kurogiri said to the monster in a grateful tone. "Save your thanks for later, Kurogiri, after we kill these brats," Thrax said with an angry tone while glaring at the human children. "Indeed. Let's finish them now before the heroes arrive," Kurogiri said in a more aggressive tone than his usual calm manner. "Here they came, guys," Juzo stated with a nervous tone, as he and the others prepared for another fight with them. "This doesn't look good for us," Ida said with a nervous sweat running down his neck. "But we can't quit now." "DMN, I am not going to die here," Sato said while putting up his fists. "We have to protect 13, Shoji said while growing more arms out to fight with. Thrax held up his staff while making it glow dangerously and Kurogiri spread out his body with more black mist coming out, as they were both ready to kill the UA students for good. Could really use some more backup about now. Owaze thought with concern as he brought back out his ninja star blade and got into a fighting stance. Bam! Then suddenly, a loud explosion burst the front entrance doors to the USJ wide open, as the sliding doors were blown off with tremendous force. Kurogiri and Thrax were also blown away by the rushing wind pressure of the explosion and knocked back to the ground once more behind the hero students and 13 at the edge of the staircase, as the great focus created a large dust cloud of smoke in its wake that covered most of the entrance. The UA students at the entrance were stunned by this unexpected surprise and all their eyes were focused on the dust cloud, with the front entrance exploding also got the attention of everyone else in the USJ as they all paused for a moment to see what the commotion was about. Through the thick smoke, the sounds of heavy footsteps were heard as a figure emerged from the dust cloud, sending a sign of relief and joy that washed over all the students and teachers at the light of hope that had finally arrived to save them. Took them long enough to arrive, Owaze thought sarcastically with a massive grin on his face, as the smoke finally cleared up to show it was All Might and 4 other people with him. All Might was seen walking into the building while carrying his yellow blazer in his right hand, along with Kuroka and UA's Big 3 dressed in their hero costumes following right behind the number 1 hero. Kurogiri and Thrax quickly recovered to look back up to see who was here now, with former eyes slightly widening in shock and the latter scowling in annoyance. The symbol of peace, Black Nekashu, UA's Big 3 soon stops in front of the smiling students with the Kuroka sporting a mischievous smirk on her face and a hand on her hips, Nijire floating in the air with her quirk and wearing a big smile, Mirio cracking his knuckles while grinning, and Tamaki doing his best to put on a brave face, as All Might then begins to speak out loud to them. Have no fear, students. I am here. All Might declared while throwing away his jacket and ripped off his tie from his neck like an angry father, as the man's usual trademark smile was gone and replaced by a very angry scowl, for the symbol of peace was pissed and ready to fight against those who harmed his students. Power Rangers Hero Force members. Ran Amamiya Ranger forms, all of them. Izuku Midoriya Ranger forms, Green Mystic Ranger, Dino Fury Red Ranger / Cosmic Fury Zenith Ranger, Quirk, One for All, Black Whip. Yui Kodai Ranger forms, Red Overdrive Ranger, Megaforce Pink, and Dino Charge Pink Ranger, Quirk, Size. Kyoka Jairu Ranger forms, Jungle Fury Wolf Ranger, Yellow Dino Ranger, Quirk, Earphone Jack. Momo Yayorozu Ranger forms, Red Samurai Ranger, Quirk, Creation, Second in Command. Itsuka Kendo Ranger forms, Jungle Fury Yellow Ranger / Jungle MSTR Yellow Ranger, Quirk, Big Fist. Fumikage Tokoyami Ranger forms, Dino Charge Black Ranger, Quirk, Dark Shadow. Yosetsu Owaze Ranger forms, Ninja Steel Blue, Quirk, Weld. 8 more Rangers to come. Hold still you slippery pest. Fury roared while launching bolts of lightning at Yui. Yui was seen running, leaping, and swiveling all over the streets of the zone as fast as she should, while also doing her best to avoid getting hit by a series of dangerous thunder attacks from Fury that was being obliterated upon contact. She was trying her best against Fury, but he's proven too powerful to beat alone. This is not looking good for me, Yui thought while using the environment around her to evade the monster's lightning. I have to find a way to get close to him. She then reeled her body to the side to let another bolt of lightning narrowly pass by her. Fury didn't let up on his assault and threw forward more a bolt of lightning towards the female ranger, as Yui managed to keep dodging the attacks before leaping behind a broken-down car. You can run, little girl, but you can't hide from me, Fury said before raising his sword with electricity sparking surrounding it. Fury's roar. He released a huge lightning slash from his sword and threw the air towards the ranger. Yui didn't dodge the attack this time and let the lightning strike the car, resulting in an explosion, while causing a massive amount of smoke to surround her. Fury eventually stopped and looked at the smoking ground while smirking. Ha ha ha. That takes care of one ranger. Fury laughed victoriously while looking at the smoke cloud. Then Yui sped out of the smoke cloud towards Fury while reaching into the small pouch on her belt that contained various metal items, and threw them directly at Fury before pressing her fingertips together to enlarge the objects she thrown into massive projectiles. Fury then uses his sword to swat away the enlarged objects as one of the projectiles manages to nail and deliver a serious blow to the Ranger villains with his defense beginning to falter. Then before Fury knew it, Yui appeared in front of him and used those giant projectiles she'd thrown as a discretion to get in close to Fury and tackle him in the gut like a football player, while grabbing hold of him and using all of her strength pushed the creature backwards until Fury immediately dug his feet into the ground to provide the Ranger from pushing him back some more. "Unhand me, you filthy human!" Fury demanded while trying to remove Yui from himself, but was unable to do so as she had a tight hold on him. Yui then used her super strength to toss Fury unceremoniously across the zone, hitting the ground with a thud, back scrapping painfully across the pavement and then into a light pole that broke apart and landed on top of the monster's body. "You annoying little pest!" Fury roared out in anger and pain, while trying to remove the light pole on top of him but found it difficult after the damage he's taken from the Ranger. "I'll make you pay for this if it's the last thing I do." Yui didn't answer back towards the monster, knowing this was her chance, and quickly ran back to the other to help them deal with the grunts they were fighting. Fury didn't follow her at the monster, as he angrily yelled out in frustration while trying to get back up. Meanwhile, in another part of the zone, the sound of explosions rattled throughout the fake ruined city and destroyed some of the buildings, causing the already unstable structure to be even more unstable with them collapsing. Bakugo and Golder were still duking it at, as Bakugo was relentless in his attacks, throwing explosion after explosion like a madman. "Ha ha ha ha." Golder chuckled darkly as he evaded another series of explosions. "You're quite volatile for a human. But need to better than this to best me in combat. Shut the hell up and let me kill you already." Bakugo shouted back at him, never taking his eyes off the monster. "I'm taking down you villains and ending this poor excuse of an attack," he declared as his eyes were blazing with barely contained rage. "Well, see about that, brat." Golder replied back and began shooting multiple fireballs from his sword toward Bakugo with surprising speed. Bakugo started blasting away the oncoming fireballs as best he could, but soon enough, there was too much for even the blonde bomber to keep track of and eventually got struck by a fireball that knocked him back on the floor in pain. "Gah!" Bakugo cried out. He tried to push himself, but the injuries he received from the villain made it harder for him. "Damn it!" he cursed while standing back up through sheer willpower alone. "You're not begging me for mercy, human, because you know I'd never grant it," Golder said with his weapon pointed at the human. "Screw you. As if I'll ever beg to a DMN villain like you. I would rather die." Bakugo screamed out in a fit of anger. "You will be when I'm through with you, stupid children," Golder said while laughing ecstatically. "Are you laughing at me? Nobody laughs at me, you APE-looking BSTRD." The blonde teen exploded again in another one of his raging fits. Bakugo launched himself at him, palms detonating with blasts that rocketed him forward at impressive speeds. Golder dodged, moving to the side, and a mischievous grin crossed his face that only infuriated Bakugo even more. "Die!" Bakugo yelled, and launched himself at Golder again with even greater speed than before, detonating an explosion in his face. Instead of fighting back, Golder took it, glaring at the monster the entire time. "Die! Die! Die!" he yelled in response, blasting Golder with the strongest explosions he could manage. It took Bakugo about 5 more blasts to realize that Golder was barely effective at all in his attacks. Before Golder decided to attack and charged towards Bakugo, aiming several slashes at him, Bakugo managed to dodge Golder's assault thanks to him using his explosions to swiftly evade each strike. "What the hell?" Bakugo snarled as he continued attacking. "I said die!" he screamed, palms sparking and each blast increasingly larger and larger. 3 of them hit Golder, as the Ranger villain felt the human's attacks were getting stronger by the second and were actually starting to affect him to some degree, much to his annoyance, but not be concerned about it since it would take much more firepower to several hurt him. "Don't get cocky, you annoying insect." Golder screamed out as he had enough before stretching out his hand to grab Bakugo by his face, much to his surprise, and smashed him HRD on the floor. Bakugo groaned in pain as Golder then kicked him in the ribs, and making across the ground before stopping in place. "Despite your best efforts, you are not powerless to stop me," Golder boasted with Bakugo struggling to stand back up. "That didn't hurt one bit." Bakugo growled as he got to his feet, anger filling his gaze as he refused to yield to this villain. "So don't you dare look down on me." All his life, he'd been the one with the upper hand, he'd always been the best and strongest. But this Golder was clearly stronger than him. As angry as he may be, Bakugo had to play it smarter than that. He had to find a way to somehow incapacitate Golder for a moment before delivering the finishing blow, his ultimate attack he'd been preparing just for some time after his defeat against that DMN nerd. As much as he hated to admit it, he couldn't hope to match against Golder in strength or durability, as he seemed to be at a disadvantage. That meant Bakugo had to end it in a single blow. But he had to make sure to attack when the Alliance member was vulnerable, giving Bakugo an opening to exploit to finish this monkey off for good, and he had just the move to do it. "You ain't SHT to me, banana breath," Bakugo said as a feral grin split on his face. "I'll finish you, right here and now, and then I'll send the rest of your loser villain friends to hell along with you." He started with a burning longing to win. Golder just growled in frustration at the stubborn me as it reminded him way too much of the Rangers. "Fine, then I'll just destroy you right now, you stupid child," Golder yelled while rushing at Bakugo in rage. Bakugo propelled himself forward with his explosions, and Golder anticipated another string of explosions, so he swung his sword at the boy to deliver a killing blow, but the Ranger villain was soon to find out that Bakugo had another plan in mind. Bakugo stopped right in front of Golder and put his hands together. In the center of Bakugo's hands, multiple explosions were being formed, and the explosive opened his palms to unleash those explosions against the villain. "Stun grenade!" Bakugo shouted while the explosion he made created a blinding light similar to a flash grenade that illuminated most of the area and caused Golder to clutch his eyes in pain. "Rayararg! I can't see!" Golder screamed while stopping before taking a few steps back and shielding his eyes from the light. "You cursed human," he said, being enraged by the human's dirty trick. "Now's my chance," Bakugo stated and shot himself up into the air, where he began to use his explosions to propel himself in a circular motion. The rapid spinning began to form a twister, which collected oxygen and gained momentum to fuel the explosion that was about to follow next. The teenager wickedly smiled to himself as this was it. Golder soon began to regain his vision and looked up to see what the human was doing, making the monster snarl furiously while igniting his sword and fire once more for a counterstrike, with Bakugo getting closer to him to unleash his attack. "Howitzer impact!" Bakugo shouted while proceeding to release the enhanced blast from his left hand at point-blank range on Golder, who swung his flaming blade at the human. "Flame wave!" Golder shouted while flinging a large upward horizontal wave of fire from his sword at the incoming Bakugo. Then the force of their two attacks clashing was enormous. The entire ruined zone was enveloped in the explosion, and the radius of the blast nearly managed to alert the others they're fighting on the other side of the zone. Meanwhile, Kirishima, Tetsu, and Kamakiri had somehow defeated the monster horde before they felt the tremendous heat and pressure emanating from this insanely powerful explosion, as well as the cloud of smoke covering the zone. "I'm going to take a wild guess and say that was probably Bakugo," Kirishima said with an awkward manner. "Who else do you know that can make a blast at that Magneto?" Kamakiri said before removing his blade from a busted cyclobot. "As much as I dislike the guy, we should probably go and see if he needs some help," Tetsu said with a bitter expression. "Easier said than done. He can act childish at a time like this," Kirishima said with a sigh. You're surprised? A new voice questioned from behind the trio. Turning around quickly, getting ready to use their quirks, they stopped when they realized it was Yui and Todoroki walking towards them. Yui. Todoroki. Man, are we glad to see you guys. Kirishima sighed in relief to see his classmates all right. As we thought, that guy Kurogiri did warp villains to every area they sent us to, Yui said to them with a useful stoic attitude. We were right it seems, Kamakiri said with scowling eyes. Why are you here anyway and with her? We ran into each other not too long after when I and Ren came into this zone, Todoroki said, surprising them a bit. Wait, Ren here's too. Where is he? Tetsu asked as he didn't see him with them. Take a wild guess, Yui said with a blank expression still present on her face while pointing at the smoke cloud in the direction where that massive explosion came from. The smoke from Bakugo and Golder's attacks began to clear, and as soon as it did, Bakugo was lying on the ground looking as though a train had hit the team with wounds and bruises all over his body, while Golder was standing over him perfectly fine as if nothing had happened to him. DMN it. Bakugo said while defeated and humiliated, as his opponent's attack destroyed his own completely with the remaining parts of the energy wave catching up to the boy and hitting him. Golder was still standing as if the blast he'd experienced had been nothing. Not only that, but Bakugo is unable to move after unleashing his ultimate move, and due to the injuries he sustained during this fight with Golder, now completely at his mercy. You're nothing but a lightweight in my eyes, human. Don't you ever forget what you are. A stupid feeble-mind weak human. Golder said, taunting Bakugo resting on the floor badly beaten up, before raising his sword against him. Now, stand still and accept your death. He said before bringing his sword down towards a defenseless Bakugo to execute him. The explosive teen shut his eyes in horror as he was unable to do anything to stop the monster in his eyes awaiting for the worse, before hearing the sound of steel clashing against one another. Ah! The hell! Bakugo said confused as he reopened his eyes to see that someone he least expected suddenly appeared in front of him and blocked the monster's golden blade from reaching him. It was Ren who managed to show up in the nick of time and was blocking Golder's weapon with his power sword while glaring hard at the monster. You just can't stand 5 minutes without shouting and exploding things, can you, Bakugo? The quirkless ranger said with his attention fully on the monster in front of him. What the hell are you doing here, wannabe? Bakugo demands the boy. Saving your butt, apparently, Ren replied back with a blunt tone. Humph. I didn't need your help, you freaking quirkless bstrd. Bakugo said to him, denying the fact he was about to get killed. I was about to trash those monsters without anyone's help. He was pissed off that the wannabe stole his thunder. He was just fine. Yeah, right. And I'm the next #1 hero. Ren said to him with plain sarcasm, making Bakugo get angrier at the ranger as the veins in his forehead were becoming more prominent. So another annoying ranger decided to show up and challenge me. Golder stated while growling very aggressively at the sight of the ranger, who prevented him from killing his prey. I'll enjoy watching you scream more than this weak human. Looking like you were revived again too, Golder, Ren said while holding his ground with all of his strength. I'll be sure to send you back to the grave from where you belong. He said, getting an annoying snarl from the armored monster. Those are some bold words, Ranger. But empty threats mean nothing to me. Golder roared out in anger before reeling back his sword and began swinging wildly at the ranger. Ren blocked every single one of Golder's strikes before ducking until one of his attacks slashed upward on the ranger villain's body, making Golder howl in pain from the blow while sparks flew off his body as reeled back from the attack. Then Ren took this chance to channel the spirit of the elephant in his right hand while it glowed green before he appeared right in front of Golder and put 2 fingers to his chest. Ah! Ren screamed out while hitting Golder with one severe punch that created a green shockwave and launched him back roughly like a ragdoll. Ah! Golder cried out loudly and was crushed on the ground several feet away from the boys. Take that, you overgrown ape. Ren said, giving him one last gaze before turning away from his own foe. Meanwhile, Bakugo only shared in shock at how all of his explosions and ultimate move didn't show much as leave a scratch on Golder, but the wannabe was somehow able to hurt him when Bakugo couldn't. This somehow infuriated Bakugo to the point that gritted his teeth and clenched his fist hard at how he was upstaged by the Ranger again. DMN. Just how is he this strong? Bakugo thought in anger as he was reminded of the sludge villain incident when the wannabe saved him back then. Why is it also the DMN Power Rangers? He thought as he didn't notice Ren walking up to him. Can you stand? Ren asked, reaching out his hand to help up the boy, but Bakugo immediately slapped his hand away and shot him a nasty expression. Nobody asked for your help. And I sure as hell didn't need it. So quit looking down on me. Bakugo shouted as he found the strength to stand back on his own. You're welcome. Ren told Bakugo sarcastically as he rolled his eyes at the blonde childish behavior. It's like talking to a child. Why you little dash, Bakugo was about to argue back until their classmates showed up. Ren. Bro, good thing that you got here, Kirishima said, extremely glad as he and the others approached them. Only someone as badass as you would show up and rescue us, Tetsu added, giving Ren a pat on the back. Good to see you guys still kicking, Ren said with a small smile. Yui walked up to her boyfriend and said something important to him. We were abused by Golder and Fury, Yui said stoically. I already learned about Golder being back, but Fury too, Ren said with a bit of surprise in his tone. Those two Ranger villains are both heavy hitters. Just how many of our enemies are back? He said, muttering the last part to himself. Kamakiri didn't say anything to the quirkless boy, as his gaze fell on Bakugo and the state he was in before a SHT-eating grin appeared on his face. Man, you look like SHT. That guy really kicked your butt good. Kamakiri commented as Bakugo looked displeased. Shut it, bug boy. I didn't lose to anyone. Bakugo shouted at him. Your injuries say otherwise. Todoroki bluntly said with Bakugo angry turning his way. Well, nobody asked you, icy hot. Bakugo replied back. I had everything under control. Yeah, right before Ren saved your sorry but from getting killed, Yui said with a blunt tone. I didn't need his help, Bakugo stated as the quiet girl rolled her eyes, as she looked at the others. Now that we saved this RETD's skin, we need to go and help the others in the class, Yui asked, as Bakugo glared at her. Did she just ignore him? Bakugo was about to launch an explosion in her back before he remembered the warning the teachers gave him and knew the other extras in class would rat on him if he were to attack her. Soon, instead of attacking her, Bakugo grumbled and turned away from the group of students. Yeah, let's go look for the others, Yui. But, are you? You're acting differently. Kirishima asked how the female ranger was acting a bit more emotional than usual. Yeah, you bit more emotional than you usually are, Tetsu said as he noticed the girl's strange behavior too. Don't worry about it. I'm okay, I'll go back to how I was after all of this is over. In the meantime, we have to regroup with the other students, and strike back on these villains. Yui answered with a stoic response. How many times do I have to tell you idiots that I never needed your help in the first place? Bakugo said as he glared at the group. The future #1 hero doesn't need a bunch of side characters slowly him down. So go F off already and waste your time helping those other useless extras in class, while I got some villains to kill. Someone needs to teach you manners, Yui said, causing him to get a tick mark on his head. Says the one that's completely monotone all the DMN time. Bakugo snapped back. So quit looking down on me, you stupid bee. Some emotions passed on the black-haired girl's face, as she quickly hid them away before turning away from him. The reasons why I'm emotionless are personal most of the time. But there is no point in your rudeness and disrespectful attitude towards other people. Now would you please stoop it up and try not to be consumed with yourself for once in your life, because it's getting real old. Yui replied back rudely to him in a deadpan tone, as this pissed Bakugo off even more. Bakugo gritted his teeth in anger and was about to beat the SHT out of the Class 1B girl until Kirishima jumped in at the last second before a fight broke out between them. Whoa whoa whoa. Cool it guys. Kirishima rushed and got in the middle of this before it escalated. This isn't the time to fight each other when everyone is in danger, he said, surprisingly stopping Bakugo from attacking Yui, as the blonde in question just flipped her off before backing away from the quiet girl. Speaking of which, that reminds me, Ren said with eyes scowling at Bakugo, Tetsu, and Kirishima before moving in a burst of speed and smacking all three of the idiots upside their heads, causing them to yelp from the pain. Ah! Tetsu yelled out while holding his head. UDMN dirty BSTRD. I'll kill you. Bakugo shouted angrily at Ren for hitting him. What the heck was that for, bro? Kirishima asked while looking at his friend in confusion. You three hot-headed idiots deserved more than that after recklessly attacking the warp villain and getting the whole class separated in the first place. Ren's tone sounded menacing and a little angry, as he glared angrily at them. What gave you three that foolish idea to charge towards that warp villain without so much as a plan in mind? He's right. Charging headfirst at a villain you know nothing about is dangerous and can get you killed. Todoroki said coldly with his own glare. Yui said with a light glaring. Kamakiri didn't say anything but gave the three of them a nasty glare too, as he also agreed with his classmates. Kirishima and Tetsu both flinched after being reminded of their screw-up while Bakugo huffs as he mutters something under his breath that nobody could hear. I'm very sorry. Tetsu immediately apologized to them. Yeah, me, too. It was so unmanly of us. Kirishima apologized as well, then turned to Bakugo. Come on, you two. Ha. Why the hell do I have to apologize to the wannabe, blank face, and half and half BSTRD? Bakugo yelled out as he didn't do anything wrong. Don't worry, we're not expecting anything from you. Todoroki bluntly said. What was that, but? Bakugo yelled at him. But before anyone could say anything else, the group heard two monstrous groans and turned to see both Golder and Fury, who had just recovered from the beating they just took, as the two Ranger villains regrouped with each other. Well, looks who's back for more, Ren said while turning his attention to the two Alliance members. Ready for a butt-kicking? You're beginning to make me angry, humans. Golder grumbled while glaring at the Ranger, as he held his chest in pain. I'm going to make you all suffer. He was about to charge at them until Fury raised his arm in front of Golder to stop him. We've wasted enough time here, Golder. We'll settle this later in the center plaza. Fury declared their battleground to his evil companion. Fine. Golder growled lowly in anger before shooting one last sneer at the students. But mark my words, Power Rangers, as well as the rest of you brats. You are only prolonging the inevitable to your destruction. This isn't over, you rotten humans. We'll be back to finish you off. So enjoy the precious few minutes of your lives as well as you can. Because the next time you see us, you'll be dead. Fury hissed threateningly at the teens. And with that, the two Alliance members vanished in a beam of light, leaving the teens alone in the zone. Once they were sure that they were gone, the students were able to relax a bit to take a breather. Phew. We beat them. Tetsu said while sighing in relief. We didn't beat them, they just made a tactical retreat, Todoroki stated before saying something else. And didn't you hear one of them just say? That they'll settle things later in the center plaza. Which is where they're going. Yui answered. Then that's where we need to be right now. Kamakiri said with a bloodthirsty grin. We need to find the others to make sure they're alright first, then go and help our teachers and Sila. The villains that tried to attack us gave us some useful information about the guy with the blue hair, the warp villain, and that thing with the bird beak. Also, Golder, Fury, and Thrax might not be the only Ranger villains here we will probably have to face. So we're going to need everyone's help for this fight. Ren informed them. Seriously, they told you just like that? Tetsu was kind of surprised the villains would tell them anything. No, we had to interrogate them first before getting the information, Todoroki said casually. You guys did what? Tetsu shouted in shock. Are they even still alive? Kirishima knew how strong these two were and hoped they at least didn't kill them. Relax, you two, we left them beaten and bruised, but alive, Ren assured him. The red and silver-headed students both breathed a sigh of relief to hear that from them. Kamakiri can't help but whistle, clearly impressed by the two thinking. Man, you almost gave me a heart there, Tetsu said laughing nervously. Yeah, that's good then. You guys can tell us more on the way. Kirishima suggested. Like hell, I'll go with you morons. Bakugo yelled in disapproval of the plan. Kirishima gave him an exasperated look. Dude, come on. Didn't we already go over this? We need to find our classmates first before fighting those guys. He said. Then go by yourselves. There's no way in hell I'm letting that monkey BSTRD get away after humiliating me like that. Bakugo replied as he really wanted to get back at Golder. But Ren wasn't in the mood for Bakugo's childish behavior right now and said something to him. Don't even think about it, Bakugo, Ren said out loud, getting Bakugo's attention on him. You don't have to be a genius to know exactly what you're thinking, right? You'll lose if you go in alone like that. Oh, yeah. And who the hell are to decide that? Bakugo demanded with attitude and gave a glare. You'll die if you try and face those monsters, Ren spoke back with seriousness in his voice. Those monsters are unlike any villain you've shown so far. So take it from someone who actually knows how to fight those things, that you won't win by facing them so recklessly and stupidly. Don't screw with me, BSTRD. I will beat you, Deku, and any of the other extras in my path. Bakugo shouted at him in a tone of both rage and resolve. You know what they say about heroes? They never lose to villains. I'll keep on winning and become the #1 hero. Are you just really courageous or just plain reckless? Ren said bluntly to Bakugo's pointless obsession with winning. Courage and recklessness are two different things, Bakugo. If anything, being too confident might be bad for you. He said as his drive for victory wasn't healthy. Bakugo gave him an incredulous look with narrowed eyes for a few moments, before huffing in annoyance. Talking to you extras is the same as talking to rocks, Bakugo said, glaring at the group with an angry stare. Courage? Recklessness? Who the hell cares about that useless CRP? I don't give a SHT how strong they are or how many times I go down. I will keep fighting. Even if I die. I won't lose. And that's the only thing I care about. I will win. That's all there is. He declared before walking away, as he wasn't in the mode to deal with those shitheads anymore. If you want to go and get yourself killed, then by all means go right ahead, Ren told him without any remorse in his tone, making everyone look his way, and Bakugo stopped in his tracks. But don't expect me to bail your sorry but out of the fire this time when you get burned for your own recklessness. He started with a cold glare. Run. Don't you think that's a bit much? Kirishima meekly asked to the quirkless teen at how heartless he was sounding right now. No, because he wants to go off on his own, half-cocked without a plan. That, and he disobeyed the unspoken rule of leaving a teammate, or in this case the rest of his team, behind just to pick a fight. Ren explained while scowling at the red-haired boy. The ranger knew that Kirishima meant well and noticed how slightly dejected he looked after using somewhat of harsh tone in his explanation. He let out a frustrated sigh. On any other days I wouldn't mind, but not today. If the stakes are as high as they are like now, you follow orders and stick with your team without question. Got it? Ren replied back stoically. Yeah, but still. Kirishima tried to say before looking back at Bakugo, flinching when he saw the murderous look on the blonde's face. Be Bakugo. Bakugo said nothing as he looked at the ranger with a very angry expression that put his past ones to shame, as his eyes were manic and filled with malice, but on the inside, he was furious and vowed to get payback for this. What the hell did you just say to me, wannabe? Bakugo asked him without shouting for one, as he glared hard at the ranger and his palms popping with explosions. I dare you to say it again to my face. Don't look down on me, you quirkless bstrd. He said, walking up to the quirkless freak face, as the two quietly stared instantly into one another's eyes with never side refusing to back down. Kirishima and Tetsu looked panicked and were about to immediately break this up before it escalated to someone serious until they were stopped by Kamakiri, who shook his head to tell them both not to interfere as he wanted to see how this would play out. Do you really believe the CRP that comes out of your mouth, or are you just that much of an egotistic dumbass? If it's the latter, then let me spell it out to you in small words for your underdeveloped childish brain to understand. Ren Brutality said without hesitation, much to Bakugo's fury, with his left eyebrow twitching in irritation to the least insult from the ranger. This is not like combat training, Bakugo. We're dealing with villains and monsters. Actual villains and monsters that won't hesitate to kill us. If you're not willing to see the bigger picture and focus on what's important because of your stupid pride, then you'll just be a deadweight who's going to drag everyone else down with that shitty attitude of yours. So grow the hell up already and get the F out of sight, you sorry excuse of a fake hero. He said to him with a serious gaze. After finishing his speech to the blonde boy, everyone there, with Yui and Todoroki being the exception, slightly gasped at what Ren said to Bakugo, as nobody had ever talked to him like that before. The explosive teen looked beyond shock and enraged after the ranger gave him a piece of her mind, as Bakugo shook hands with red eyes wide full of rage and uncontrollably growled loudly like a wild animal at Ren. This little worm had mouthed off to him for the last time. Nobody talks to him like that, least of all some freaky quirkless extra. He felt an overwhelming emotion start to bubble within him, and Bakugo decided to act on it without hesitation. Bakugo then angrily fires an explosion towards Ren at point-blank range, who barely dodges the blast by swiftly shifting his body to the right before Ren grabs Bakugo by his gym collar and then headbutts the blonde in the front head, which makes him let a weak cry in pain. The headbutt stuns Bakugo for a moment as Ren pushes him back into a wall, holding Bakugo in place before punching him straight in the left gut and then in the face, as blonde slightly slid down the wall in pain. Ren then grabbed Bakugo by his neck, holding the boy in place before deeply staring at him with a pissed serious expression on the ranger's face. From this point on, you don't even F-breath unless I say it's okay. Ren shouted in absolute rage as he was seriously not in the mood right now for Bakugo's CRP. Bakugo didn't say anything, he just glared angrily back at him with a murderous expression across the boy's face. Before he could say something back, Ren threw Bakugo HRD on the ground as he rolled on his front side before he turned to the others. Bakugo scowling hateful at the wannabe for treating him like that before speaking up. You, BSTRD. How dare you look down on M-. Enough. Ren yelled in a demanding tone while silencing Bakugo from speaking farther. I've had my fill of your selfishness and petty ego. Do as you wish, but stay out of our way. He stated with annoyance as he was clearly fed up with the blonde boy's childish behavior. Come on. We're wasting enough time here as is with this nonsense. The boy firmly said before walking away in the direction to find the rest of his classmates. Yui and Todoroki quietly just followed his lead as they walked beside him. Are you sure that was a good idea for him to do that? Tetsu couldn't help but ask Kamakiri, who only shrugged his shoulders. Can't give that son of B too much freedom or else he'll run off and do something stupid again, Kamakiri said so non-casually with a scowl. Like what Amamiyayu just said, the stakes are too high for having any one of us to be disobeying orders right now. He stated before following after the others with Tetsu right behind him. Meanwhile, Holotami observed the whole conversation in silence and couldn't contain his sigh of disappointment at Bakugo's behavior, especially with a villain attack happening right now. He has tenacity, I'll give him that much. But that drive of his is going to be that boy's downfall if he's not careful. Holotami thought in disappointment, as he was holding out hope this kid was a lost cause. Meanwhile, Kirishima didn't exactly move just yet, as he was having a maelstrom of feelings about the conversation before gazing down at Bakugo, who was still sitting there on the ground in silence with his eyes on the floor. The red-haired frowned and was about to speak out to him for some words of encouragement until the explosive team said something first. Courage? Recklessness? Fake hero? Bakugo hissed out with build-up rage while running a hand down his face as he hollowly laughed. Are you freaking kidding me? I didn't need his help or telling me what to do. He finally exploded with unblinking rage. Kirishima held up a hand. Bakugo. You hear me? Bakugo shouted before throwing explosions on nearby random objects in the area. Everything that Wannabe did, everything he's ever said, was nothing but bullshit. Was he enjoying himself when he paraded around as a weak, quirkless freak? Does he love staring down at me? If I ever see him again I'll kill him myself. He punctuated every sentence with another explosion. If he wants to play hero, then he can PSS off and go rescue the other extras in class. I don't need that lying JRK's help. I can take care of myself. He finalized his rant with one more blast on a building wall, demolition it into rubble in a matter of seconds. Bakugo stiffened while panting heavily from exhaustion after overusing his quirk too much. Pain thrummed through his joints, but he only felt the gnarled confusion as Kirishima stared at him with a frown on his face. Outwardly, Bakugo is silent, but inside he is fuming, a raging inferno building within his soul, begging to be let out. You had better hope you survive this, Wannabe, Bakugo seethed within his mind while gripping his fist tightly. Because once these stupid villains are taken care of, you and I going to have it out. I'm gonna make an example of you because nobody disrespects the future #1 hero. Seriously, Bakugo. Kirishima said with a little pity on his face. When are you going to learn that not everything is about you? Sure, you have an awesome quirk, amazing fighting that can blaze through almost anything type of situation, and one of the few talented people in class, but for one can't you be okay with getting some help? He said, starting to lose his patience with him. Shut the F up already, SHT head. I can do this all on my own. Bakugo spanned at the boy for no good reason other than being angry. I don't need those lying son of A, B or anyone of worthless extras help to kill these villains. So stop pitying me like I'm another weak extra and leave me the hell alone already. He stated before turning on his heels and blasting into the sky in the opposite direction to go fight the villains. Kirishima glanced between the others and Bakugo, before pinching the bridge of his nose and following after the others without Bakugo. Bakugo's anger just doomed him to a worse fate. How can someone be both manly and an idiot at the same time? Meanwhile, Bakugo's mind was racing with unpleasant thoughts and his face scowling so deep it looked like he was about to murder someone. Those DMN extras will never surpass me. I don't need anyone's help. I have the best quirk and more talent than anyone here. I'll show them why I'm the best. I'll show them why I deserve to a hero. I'll defeat all these villains and monsters on my own. I'll graduate at the top of my class. Then, I'll rapidly rise through the rankings until I'm the #1 hero. Bakugo thought, growling in frustration while flying through the air as he just made his way out of the ruins zone. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 22. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author GokuMuto on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.